Morning, everyone, and welcome to the People Committee of the Scottish Police Authority. As a reminder to everyone, should I drop off the call, I'll ask that Angela Leach, a board member, steps in and chairs the meeting until I get reconnected. Today, I'd like to pay a particular welcome to new board members, Amina Khan and Gary Forsyth, who are joining us for their first meeting. Our board member Paul Eadie will join the meeting from 12:30 and will bid apology for the first part of the meeting. No other member apologies have been received. I'd like to also welcome colleagues from the trade unions, the staff associations, and Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary in Scotland. As a reminder to attendees and for those watching for the first time, I want to provide clarity at the outset that when papers are presented, we will take initial comments and questions from SPA board members before I then bring in staff association and trade union attendees to provide members with any wider perspective they may wish. Members will then be asked to ask further questions following these comments and observations. Finally, before I start, I'd like to put on record my appreciation for Katie Miller, who has recently left Police Scotland. As the Director of Human Resources, Katie provided this committee with sound advice and was instrumental in the evolution of reporting to this committee. The constructive way that Katie engaged with this committee and myself as chair will be her legacy, and we are grateful for her work. On behalf of the committee, I wish to put on record that we wish Katie well in her future endeavours. There's no declarations that have been notified in advance. Can I just please confirm with board members if they wish to make any declarations or connections at this time? Okay, there's none intimated. In relation to item 1.3, decisions taken since the last meeting of the committee, there is nothing to note. The record will show that. 1.4, the public minute from the meeting held on the 4th of December 2025 is for approval. It's been circulated. Can I invite members to agree the draft as an accurate record of that meeting? Is everyone content? So that's approved and adopted. I move then to the rolling action log and matters arising. A number of actions are proposed to be closed and a number remain ongoing. In relation to action 2, PC 2025-1204-02, this update came from Police Scotland and would be helpful to hear from the operating officer, Vicky Morton, before we approve to confirm she is supportive and involved as required in this work. Vicky, can you confirm that?
Yes, great, thanks, Chair. Yes, as noted, there's lots of activities which align with Police Scotland Policing Together's programme of work, which will positively impact forensic services as well as the wider SPA. So yes, we have been engaging closely with Police Scotland, and but we also recognise that we might have other activities that are quite specific and unique to our environment, our people, our culture within forensic services. So yes, I'm happy to support the closure of this action, Chair.
Thank you. And no doubt, Vicky, if there are other areas, you will report that to the committee in due course.
Absolutely, thanks.
Thank you. So are members content to agree the updates provided in relation to the action log and the matters that are arising therein? Okay, we can accept that as approved. The final item under item 1 is a decision on taking business in private in relation to items 6, 7 and 8. In accordance with section 20 of the Scottish Police Authority standing orders, I now invite members to agree to taking those agenda items 6 to 8 in private. Before we move to the private items in this meeting, I will pause and ask people to leave the call, as this will be a member-only discussion at that time. So in terms of our members, in accordance with section 20, do you agree to taking agenda items 6, 7 and 8 in private? That's agreed. Moving into the core of the business. Item 2 on wellbeing. Item 2.1, your voice matters in the next steps. Leslie Webber, the Head of Strategy, Insight and Engagement from Police Scotland. Leslie, can I invite you to speak to the paper?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I'll take members through the paper today, but I'll assume that it is read. But I will also provide an overview of the purpose of the paper and the actions that we're seeking members to approve today. Following our last update on the quantitative results for the Your Voice Matters survey, we're here today for people committed to bring the high-level results for the qualitative analysis for 2025 workforce survey. These are presented by organisations, so that is Police Scotland, SPA Corporate and SPA Forensic Services. I think we're really encouraged when we looked at the analysis to report that there's been positive progress made in the 2025 results when we compare them to 2024. So the scores across our culture, first line managers, supervisor, your role, our organisation, senior management, these are all up from last year, and your team remains the same. I think of significance is that there has been no decline at all in the theme index scores. As you know, Chair, we had a strong response to our survey this year, which we're really pleased about, and this means that small percentage increases are statistically significant. In the paper, we're sharing the results following our thematic analysis for 2 of the qualitative questions within the survey. So what we are doing well and what we can improve. In the paper, we've broken this down by organisation and theme. So along with the number of mentions and the percentage of overall responses to the question this theme relates to. The figures have been left out of the SPA corporate results due to the smaller sample size. Just to explain that, that's why. There are differences for each of the organisations, but strategic leadership and management, engagement and visibility was a top theme for each of them. For the Police Scotland results, we've been working with the Chief Officer's team to define and agree our areas of strategic priority following the latest results. These will require strategic service-wide focus, and they include estates, equipping people and workforce pressures, and building capacity. Colleagues have told us that these are the areas that are most important to them and therefore require a national focus from the Chief Officer team. Results do differ locally for our various business areas and departments, and my team are currently working with human resources and with local leaders to support them in defining the priorities that are relevant to their specific areas. You'll see in the paper that we've laid out our supporting framework for assisting with this. This will also include a new guide for local leaders alongside a local call to action overview that will summarise where focus may be required within localised results. This will also be supported and enabled by our ongoing communication and engagement approach laid out in the paper and any shared learning opportunities. You'll see within the appendix to the paper, we've also outlined a timeline that will take us from now until the launch of the 2026 survey later this summer. And that highlights the key milestones that are discussed within the paper. My colleague, Kevin Ditcham, who has been leading the survey, is also at committee today, and we're both very happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you for that, and thanks, Kevin, for making yourself available also. Can I move straight to board members? Are there any questions to be made at this time? There's a number of members put their hands up. The first one to put his hand up was Alistair Hay.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leslie, for guiding us through the report. And I think, as you outlined, it's a positive report. It is good to see that there has been a strong response across the organisation in key areas. There's no decline, and that explanation around small, what look like relatively small movements because of the size of the survey are actually statistically significant. So thanks for guiding us through that. I'm supportive of the direction they travel. I appreciate all the work that's happened over the previous 12 months. And I think this survey probably reflects the work that was undertaken. I suppose for me, what I'm thinking about is Vision 2030. and the progress that is being made by Police Scotland towards that. And there's a lot of actions, there's a lot of activity within the organisation. So given the significant work that is going to be undertaken around the survey responses, how are you making sure that we don't end up in a situation where we have different parts of the organisation essentially doing the same work, so that all the work across the organisation is effective and efficient, is properly streamlined, and it takes account of the whole organisation. And then the second part is, how do you intend to use the findings, the results from the survey, alongside other performance measures to actually indicate that progress is being made towards Vision 2030?
Thank you, Alistair. And very good questions. The workforce survey is very much aligned to the work that's taken place within the vision and the 3-year business plan around the workforce. There are a number of milestones in the 3-year business plan that are taken forward and also will be taken forward into the next 3-year business plan. It's really important that everything that we're doing in the workforce survey is adjoined to what's going on there with our HR colleagues and with the different work streams that are taking place. I think, as I mentioned earlier and in the paper, we're working very closely with all of our HR strategic leads to help us in this, and also working with HR around the colleague engagement platform that we're developing as well, just to make sure there's no duplication, to make sure that we're completely aligned, that the actions that they're taking forward, that we're taking forward, don't contradict each other, and that we make sure that, I guess that goes back to the question around efficiency, to making sure that there's no duplication or contradiction. Kevin, I don't know if you want to add anything further.
Thanks, Leslie. Thanks for the question. I guess this links to how we make it visible around the Chief Officer team, those strategic priorities, so we can be really clear around what this service will be taken forward at a national strategic level, and the opportunities for local leaders to respond to their specific survey results, Alistair. So those shared learning sessions that we talk about in the paper hopefully will become an opportunity for people to share good practice, but also to avoid duplication at a local level about activity that's maybe been taken forward at a national level as well. So really opening up the opportunities this year as we respond to the 2025 results for that two-way dialogue and that relationship building at all levels for this across the service.
Thanks for that, Kevin. I see that Assistant Chief Constable Waddle has put his hand up. Is it related to this, Alan? Do you want to come in just now?
It was, Chair. It was just maybe to try and bring it to life from I'm obviously the ACC for operational support. It maybe just to try and bring it to life, if that would be a help for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Carry on.
So I just think there's an intrinsic link, isn't there, between the survey links and the 3-year strategy and the key deliverables in it. So from an operational support perspective, 2 of the key deliverables are the remodelling of roads policing and also looking at the RDU function. So business areas that are under pressure are absolutely essential to Police Scotland. And then when you look at the survey, it's about sense of belonging, and it's often about capacity issues across the organisation. So the manner in which we engage with the workforce in OSD, the manner in which we are taking forward those 3-year key deliverables is absolutely hand in hand with how we try and respond to the staff survey. So making sure the workforce is engaged, making sure they've got an opportunity to help shape the direction of travel, and also to understand their importance in delivering what are key roles, I think is a fantastic opportunity. And that's certainly how I'm trying to bring that to life in OSD at the same time as delivering the objectives of the organisation.
That perspective is really helpful to us, and I'm sure others will pick that up as we go through the meeting. Thanks for that intervention. Can I come now to Amina Khan?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Leslie, for your report. Just picking up on what the last comment, it's helpful to hear that there will be staff involvement in planning, because I was going to ask about the involvement, I guess, of staff associations and trade unions in that planning process, but also beyond that into, I guess, the monitoring of the plans and the kind of evaluation of progress and impact, and just some assurance around those arrangements. I guess it would also be helpful, maybe for committee to receive occasional updates on the progress of local plans as well, just to ensure that we have that oversight.
Thank you.
Leslie, come back to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see no reason at all not to bring updates. We are working very closely with local areas this year, taking a much more intensive approach to supporting with the activity that we've identified and that we are identifying with local areas and the learning that we're going to be sharing. So I think it would be reasonable to ask us to come back and provide an update in advance of the next workforce survey that comes out.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Can I move then to Angela Leach?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Leslie and the team. It is really encouraging to see the report and the different activities that you've set out here. I just wondered, a comment in particular. I really welcome the 4 priorities, and in particular the reference to workforce pressures and building capacity. But I'm just thinking and reflecting on there's an element of dependency on a strategic workforce plan associated with that. So I know we're going to have an update later on, but it's maybe something that we need to just bear in mind as a committee. And my other questions were really in relation to the work that you've already done with the timescales completing in February. Is there anything that you can add to that in terms of how that's been received and any feedback that you have? And my final one is on the exit interviews, how that's been prioritised. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, if I can hand over to you to update on those last 2 questions, and then I'll come back to your first question, Angela.
Thanks, Angela. Yeah, in terms of how the work has been received, I think it would be fair to say that we were having really positive conversations with leaders across the service, and indeed many areas have already started thinking about what those responses to their workforce survey results for 2025 look like. People really welcome the opportunity to have those areas of focus highlighted, that we're providing a kind of 1-page easily digestible summary about where leaders might want to focus attention, with scope for any local circumstances or nuance that they understand among their teams as well to add to that. So yes, I think that taking that national strategic priorities approach with the kind of bottom-up approach and that coming together in the middle has been well received. In terms of the exit survey, that's the exit survey sits with our HR colleagues in terms of the kind of rollout of that and how that's used and updated. So I don't know if Nikki might want to come in on that specifically. I wouldn't want to speak for you.
Nikki, are you able to contribute in that point?
Yeah, it's just to confirm that our exit interview pattern demonstrates that our staff survey is very reflective. So one of the key hindrance stressors, and it's in the dashboard that we will discuss later in the agenda, is resources. So that is something that's come through the staff survey very strongly, and that we are obviously responding to in that capacity creation. Recognition is also another key factor. And then it's for promotion externally or advancement. So that's in that. So what I would say is there's a very close correlation by what our workers who are in service are telling us and those that are exiting. So, and as a consequence of that, we work very closely with strategy and engagement to make sure that actions are aligned from both of those feedback sources.
And we'll no doubt pick those up as we go through the agenda as well. Angela, you still got your hand up at the legacy, I take it. Okay, and finally on this item, Gary Forsyth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Leslie, for a really interesting report, and congratulations to you and your team on turning out such an impressive piece of work. My experience of these is that people tend to participate for one of two reasons. Firstly, they're either very unhappy with the organisation, or secondly, they're confident that something will result as a result of their feedback. And this one certainly seems to be the latter, given you've got that confidence and the progress from last year. Of course, what that does mean is you've set yourself a high bar for continuing that throughout the rest of the year, with the rest of the organisation continuing to respond and listen to people's concerns. But really well done for getting that baseline in and progressing that work. My question really is, we get the value from the real free text bits, which is where often the nuggets are hiding in these things. And particularly given the importance of the work around anti-racism, have you been able to draw anything at a strategic level from the free text comments that could link valuably into the working together work, and how is that being fed across?
Thank you, Gary. First of all, thank you for your feedback. That's very welcome. And secondly, yes, absolutely, we have been pulling out the sort of disaggregated data and the information that we're getting for those with protected characteristics is something that we've been looking closely at, something that will be taken internally to our Policing Together board to look at and discuss. Kevin, if you're able to just provide a bit more of an overview on where we are with that.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks, Gary. I guess there's a range of further insight packs, as we would call it, that sit behind this paper that we're looking to pull together and actively pulling together now and making sure that they're in the hands of the people that need them. One of those insight packs looks at disaggregated data, as Leslie said, across protected groups, protected characteristic groups, as well as things like rank, role, length of service, etc., so that we can really start to understand the intersectional experiences of colleagues in the round and how their experiences are showing up within the workforce survey data. I think it's important to say that the workforce survey data, potentially a result, for example, is not because of someone's characteristics necessarily. And I think it's important to highlight that it shows an opportunity for further engagement and further listening and understanding for colleagues. So I guess what we're looking to do is understand where there might be opportunities for further exploration, further relationship building and listening to colleagues. And that's what the work we're doing at the moment will help us address.
Thanks for that.
Brilliant, thank you.
The colleagues from the Staff Association and Trade Unions, if you don't mind, I'll take the next item because I think the conversation will be enriched if we have that as well, and then we'll continue if that's okay. So can I move at the moment to item 2.2, which is the Workforce Voice Report, which really is relevant to what we've just been discussing. Nikki Page, do you want to take us through that, and then we'll come back to it?
Certainly, Chair, and thank you. And yes, it's a kind of direct lead on. So this paper seeks to give an overview of the provisions in place across the organisation, and is a composite of work from obviously HR, strategy, engagement. So we've gathered all the information from the different areas of Police Scotland. In terms of this, it's aligned with the thriving workforce and the principles of the Fair Work First guidance of Scottish Government is obviously through everything we do in Employment Voice. What we've sought to do is outline to members all the tactical provisions that we have in place that align with the thriving workforce and our organisational vision. The principle that we are seeking is always to hear our workforce, but act on behalf of what we hear and ensure that there's a two-way dialogue. So we are updating, but also that we are taking the opportunity to have an evidence base to what people are telling us as well. That's what the paper seeks to outline. I know members have read it. It's got a considerable number of tactical overviews within it, but I'm happy to stop there and take any questions in regards to that as well, Chair.
Thank you. And we'll go to board members for the questions, and then I'll come to Staff Association, Trade Unions. Colleagues in the board, any questions at this time? Can I come to Angela Leach first, please?
Thank you, and thanks again, Nikki. There's a huge amount of activity in this paper, so hopefully that will make a difference in the longer term. I just wondered in particular though, how you are going to measure what's working and what's probably taking up resources that could be redirected elsewhere. You know, what's the mechanism for you understanding that, you know, some of these will hit the spot and others won't? I just wondered what's going on there. And the next iteration of the survey, I wonder about the, is there any indication that we're going to see feedback that we can draw upon that separates the views of staff from officers?
Thanks for that, and I'll answer those kind of 4 different points. So in terms of the activities and measurement, we have been on a journey to obviously collect and say what is our people measurements, and central to that is the cultural dashboard, which I think we kind of gave an overview to members recently, and we're continuing to build that out because those are the indicators that we would use to say what is happening in the workforce. What does that indicate about well-being, happiness, contentment? Over and above those measurements, we also have the strategic dashboard, the HR strategic dashboard that we will go on, which gives insights into not just what we've got in the cultural dashboard, but other elements like our leavers interviews, etc. as well. So they are all measurements and indicators for us in terms of the temperature check for the organisation and where we're at. Further to that, obviously, the ongoing commitment to survey that we've got under this Chief Constable on a routine basis is helping us look at what is changing really in terms of perception of workforce from one point to the next. And we've got a greater deal of consistency over the last few years in terms of that, so that we can genuinely home in on, is that metric changing or not? Are we moving the dial? So that's really important to us as well. Separately to that, obviously, we do break down our data both in the strategic dashboard, but through the cultural work we're doing as well on the cultural dashboard into officers and staff, so that we're looking for trends within the different aspects of our workforce so that we can respond to them and measure those differences as well. So hopefully that's answered your question.
Thanks for that. Can I come to Amina?
Thank you. Yeah, clearly lots of work going on and lots of engagement, which is great to see. I suppose that going forward, it might be helpful for committee to receive a little bit more detail around the actual outcomes and actions of some of these fora and groups that are already in place. Just kind of highlights of key things that have been undertaken, work undertaken, and any outcomes. For example, like the Bridge Forum, that'd be quite helpful to hear a little bit more about some of the actions that are taking place there. And I guess what was perhaps maybe missing for me a little bit from the report was the work going on around excuse me, tackling sexism and misogyny. So just a little bit of detail on what's happening in that space would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll take that away and ensure that future reporting incorporates that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And can I come then to Alistair Hay?
Thanks, Chair. And Nikki, thank you for guiding us through the report. My questions actually have been substantially answered when you were responding, to the earlier questions. It's really now for me just to stress that importance of employee voice and making sure that the platforms you have are effective. And I wonder if you could maybe just say a little bit more then about how you're ensuring that these are genuine two-way dialogues within the organisation.
So thanks for that. In terms of that two-way process, obviously there's a number of points that are made in the report. So we have the individual opportunities via survey to feedback, and obviously it was also mentioned by, I think it was Gary, that looking at individual comments as well and seeing what that tells us. We do that with exit interviews as well. We go through the individual comments to see if we can find either individual concerns that we've got from units that we need to feed back to those units, or indeed kind of broader themes that we need to look at. So we've got opportunities for the individual. Separate to that, and really critical to our response to employee voice, has got to be the voice of our trade unions, our staff associations, and our diversity staff associations, because people have got to have different avenues to tell the organisation get support and get representation as well. All of those groups, we have active committees in place to ensure that we get that opportunity to get feedback from the workforce. We have a two-way dialogue. Truthfully and honestly, in all things employee relations, we don't always agree, but we are certainly advised of the differing positions, and we have good dialogue around that, and a huge amount of partnership working goes on in place with the trade unions and the staff associations to ensure that we are effectively responding to voice, and I know the trade unions are on the call, so I thank them and the staff associations for that. So multiple mechanisms, a lot of governance around it, a lot of formal meetings, but I would also advise that in the margins, a lot of informal relationships where staff associations, both diversity staff associations, trade unions and the statutory staff associations will come forward and represent key matters as they arrive as well, which I think is really important in voice, that things are managed dynamically when there's problems as well. So hopefully that gives you some assurance, Alistair, that we've got all bases from individual to groups covered in that framework of governance.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful, Nikki. And just a final comment from me. We're going to talk about my career, I think, later on. And you know that type of approach is and I think a great opportunity for that two-way communication and for voice. And I know there's all the informal stuff that goes on as well. So thank you.
Thanks. And Nikki, before we move to staff associations, etc., the question I had was around the initiative around People Direct, which is first line HR advice and early intervention. Learning from where we have unfortunately ended up in tribunals, etc., is very much the importance of getting that professional advice alongside the operational managers at the earliest opportunities, so that the employee is protected appropriately and the organisation gets the best outcome for everyone. Could you give us a bit of insight into that, and how mature is that now?
So since launching the new structure, we've had a rise in both hits on our new policy hub and also calls into People Direct. So both of those are positive indicators. We've got a process now that we've changed structure as well. We've got far more lean into what the data is telling us as a consequence of that analysis work that is getting done. We've also been able to look at focus on sessions. So that's helpful in that we are noticing trends that both individuals and managers are telling us. And that is allowing us to be proactive in terms of education for people when they need it. So, for example, attendance management is a key challenge for the organisation. And what we've been able to do is run focus on sessions where we have put some 600 managers through immediate education while they're managing employment matters. So that means they're better equipped to deal with the conversations they need to have more positive outcomes, which I think addresses the heart of your question around about how do we get that right for the individual. Well, we only get that right for the individual if we've educated our people and we've set the expectations of how we expect them to manage that individual through some of the tough times in their life. So those sessions help us as well. and we're starting to see kind of differences as a consequence and good feedback from those sessions. So that's one mechanism. Conscious that Alan's wanting to come in. I'm sure he's going to give an operational assessment as well.
No, sorry, Chair. No, Nikki, to be honest, it was just to back up the point that Nikki was making there around about those sessions. Certainly from an operational perspective, I know how well they've landed. They're entirely in the space that we need them to be in. And I think that the number of 600 line managers going through that shows the level of interest and how we are pushing attendance at these sessions as well. So that's all it was, Chair.
That's really encouraging. The other point about that clearly is the early intervention post these sessions, that HR support. So thank you. On that, at this stage, can I open it up to our staff associations and trade union colleagues for your reflections, what you've heard, before I ask if there's any final reflections from the board members on these two items. Clearly, the survey looked at the individual level and the organisation, and the voice report looked at where those structures are across the organisation and the day-to-day running of it, and making sure voice is heard. So, Dave Ferguson from Unison, can I bring you in first?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, obviously from Unison's point of view, we welcome the survey. We welcome the results that have come from the survey. I think it was Gary who mentioned about the fact it's when you start diving into those sort of free text comments that you get the real sort of honest picture of how colleagues are actually feeling. So we welcome the report. We welcome the actions that are going to be taken on it. There's for me, I think there's some key elements within that report that really needs to be targeted. It's more so in the bullying, harassment and grievance area, because I think the survey did show that there's that low confidence in action being taken on that, and I think there's not really been a massive improvement from the previous year's survey to this year's survey. So hopefully we'll start to see some real actions moving forward on that. I think the fact that a lot of the staff and more than half the respondents who came back and said that they wouldn't recommend working for Police Scotland or the Scottish Police Authority as an organisation has to be a bit of a red flag for us and for the board about the fact that that's how staff are feeling. But I appreciate what Gary also said about the fact that people who fill in these surveys, are going on with the genuine reason to feedback on how they are feeling, or is it a means of actually going on there and just having a real go at the organisation? So I think we welcome the survey. We obviously we're looking forward to the actions, and I picked on a really good point about the fact about having a distinctive police staff action plan as well. We'd obviously like to see that be looked at as well, where we separate the police staff voice and the police officer voice, because they can have two distinctively different views in that respect. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave, and your comments are no doubt been heard by Nikki and our colleagues as well. We look forward to the action plans in due course. Can I come to Emma from the Police Federation, please?
Good morning, Chair. Morning, all. I'm from the Scottish Police Federation. I have the People and Equality portfolio, so very closely linked into a lot of the subject matters today. So welcome the comments and the positives highlighted by Leslie. I think even marginal increase in terms of that positivity can only be celebrated. And also welcome Nikki's updates round about hearing what the voices are saying, but actually acting on them, because sometimes that's a frustration for people across all of the organisations, that we keep saying this, but what does that actually mean? So I think meaningful change and working towards that's a positive. We are closely linked in at the Federation with HR and right away across the organisation to try and cut things off at that early intervention stage. So that that's absolutely where we also want to be. So we are within a lot of those governance structures, and certainly do support all those kind of early engagement pieces. But issues round about people and equality type matters is the biggest caseload, if you like, if you were to say, within the Federation, and that continues to be a common theme across the board. Thank you.
Thanks for that. The important thing is that you're embedded in these forums for allows that conversation to take place. But the points you made about early intervention are echoed across this committee, so thank you for that.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, colleagues. We'll move on to item 3, 3.1, which is the Q3 workforce strategic dashboard. I suppose my health warning is there's so much, if when you look at a dashboard, we can go down rabbit holes and not really deal with the big important stuff that strategically moves us forward. So as a committee, I would like us to think about what are the big issues in this as well, and notwithstanding people have questions and we will explore that, but just that general steer. Nikki, to yourself, please.
Yeah, and thank you, Chair. Members are aware that the dashboard is a standard quarterly report that looks at workforce trends and that we've evolved that with the committee. I think the key considerations in regards to this is, and it will not surprise the committee in terms of the dialogue that we've spoke about capacity, we've spoke about workforce engagement. There's elements of that within the dashboards in respect to trends in absence, tell us information about that, and the psychological well-being of our organisation. We've got information there also on modifications, which obviously leads to the capacity conversation, and engagement around training, development, and we're seeing improvement. And the reason I raise it is because it has been raised at this committee. We're seeing improvement in figures of OST and people being within card, which I think is worth pointing out because of that historic conversation. And we've got good participation and high levels of participation and training attendance, which again was flagged up to the committee before, and the committee asked what we were doing to enhance that. So I think the figures show that we're moving in the right direction as well. But I'll stop, Chair, because I'm conscious that members will have questions around the dashboard, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks for that, and I invite questions straight away. Thank you. Can I come to Amina? Thank you, Amina.
Thank you. Thanks, Nikki. Just looking at picking out a few things, which I noted that for this quarter, it was the highest number of dismissals compared to the previous 2 years, and also I think the highest number of grievances opened. Obviously, without getting too pedantic about it, is there anything particularly of note that has changed in the last 2 years that you're aware of, that thematically would be of interest to the committee that might be driving some of that? I suppose it's difficult in the absence of sort of, year-to-date data and kind of the longer-term data to look at the trend analysis there in this report. But just any thoughts on what some of the drivers might be would be helpful.
So I think there's a number of things happening in the organisation that are driving probably both grievance and you noted dismissals as well. So in terms of grievance, I think first of all there's a backdrop that there's a national trend to rising grievance across all of industry, and policing is no exception to that. However, internally, and one of my colleagues from the Federation already mentioned it, we see certainly disability as a significant characteristic in terms of the number of our disabled workforce that will tend to grieve. Some of that is around reasonable adjustments and perceptions of what is reasonable, the force view versus the individual view, and some of it is around the timelines that it takes us to put unique adjustments in place. So some adjustments can be very difficult for us to facilitate, particularly if they involve, for example, technology because of our security systems. So things that will be easy to apply in another organisation can be more difficult to get a solution to in policing. So there's lots of variation as to the reason for grievance, but definitely disability is a single and most compelling kind of factor in relation to pattern. Equally, we've done within the last 2 years a lot, as you would anticipate, on equality training. So we've upskilled our workforce in knowledge and understanding in this area, and I think that's a good thing. in terms of their tolerance levels and flagging up when there's problems with the organisation, because the organisation can't deal with something if they don't know. So as much as I don't like that there's trends in that area, I equally see it as an opportunity for us to respond organisationally. And we're doing that with the EDI training that we've got in place and the engagement with the workforce, and members will be aware not only of the EDI modules, but the anti-racism training that is ongoing at present. The other thing that's happening separate from grievance is a lot of work on standards. I think most members are aware of the work in PECS, where we're looking at codes of ethics, we're looking at the standards for the workforce, we're doing a lot of training in that place. I think that is good in that it means that we are setting the bar for the workforce and our expectations, but the converse side of that is people will report things, it'll become organisational knowledge, and will also take action against individuals as a consequence. So I think all of those things play into both the pattern in terms of dismissal, but also the patterns in terms of grievance, against accepting that there's also market factors in that and patterns in that as well that we are subject to. So hopefully that's answered your question fully.
Very helpful, thank you.
Thanks very much. Can I come to Gary Forsyth?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nikki. A really interesting report, lots and lots of detail in there. We could probably spend ages going through it. So I'll limit myself to the area of modified duties, if I may, because that's seen a fairly significant rise over a period of years now and is a pretty high level, I think everybody would agree. My question is one, obviously due to the geography and the spread of those people, there'll be a range of clinicians involved in decision making. And so the question I have is, how are we assuring consistency in decision making between all the different clinicians that are involved? And how are we assuring that? And are we content as well that the actual decisions are definitively clinically led and aren't being swayed by individual preferences of people seeking modifications?
Thank you for that question. So in regards to modified duty, there's probably a number of factors that we're considering that. Firstly, we've got an aging police officer workforce. So we know, and the statistics for injuries on duty are within the wider papers. So we know that injury takes longer to recuperate from when we are older in life, and that's just fact. So those patterns of modified going up might be reasonably expected in some respects. However, all of that being said, there is also clear patterns around the effects of trauma, which we've done a lot of work on because of that pattern. And separately, you mentioned clinical decision making. Well, in terms of the assessment of police officers, we tend to assess against the role of constable because police officers can be moved around in a way that staff can't. And they're a much more flexible and agile part of the workforce in terms that the chief constable can obviously say, I need you there tomorrow and I need you to do that. So as a consequence of that, there's a kind of wider ranging assessment against the officer constable that we'll do, as well as assessment against the role that they might be undertaking at any one time. Now, what that does mean is that with clinicians, we are always doing work. In fact, we've got a workshop in March to sit down and go over our cases and say, here's our learning from those cases. Let's jointly work together and build knowledge on it, because obviously as clinicians change, we have to visit that process and look at occupational reports for consistency. Staff associations are really good in this space at flagging things to us when they think it's not quite right, which is really helpful, as are local managers. So that gives us an opportunity at those contract meetings to discuss where we don't think clinical decisions seem to be comprehensive or where we would expect them to. So a lot of work to try and get that consistent effect of and make sure it's driven by an absolute clinical position rather than swayed by an individual's position. Separately to that, of course, we do have organisational backdrops that mean that decisions and outcomes can be variable for individuals. So, for example, if you work up north, where there's not the same footprint for contact command and control or other roles, we are restricted to how we might be able to deploy you if you've got modifications. So all of that boils down to as well that we still have to assess an individual as an individual. So the clinical position is one position, but the organisational backdrop, capacity and the individual's ablement is all got to come together ultimately to make a decision, and we try and get consistency and fairness as far as practical in all those decisions through a panel that considers all organisational cases at centre when somebody can't work at a local level. And there is a report coming to members on that shortly. It's part of the action log, and we'll be with you that will go through that process in more detail. So hopefully that's answered your question.
I was going to reference that. Sorry, I was going to reference that outstanding action that will bring more information, Gary. But back to yourself for any other point.
No, thanks, Tom, and thanks, Nikki. That answers it very well. I'm really pleased to hear there's a panel as well, because it can be really difficult to monitor the work of individuals. That panel will help enormously, I'm sure. Thank you. Thank you. Angela Leach, can I come to you, Angela?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, and just building on what Gary was asking, Nikki, modified duties obviously flagged up a fair bit in the best value audit that the board looked at last week. I'm just wondering how we're maybe reviewing the extensive wellbeing support that is offered to staff and officers. Rightly so, but given the trends that we're seeing, are we sure that we are focusing our resources in the right areas to maximise the use of those resources, but also to help ensure that we can support people to sustain employment in the roles that they're appointed to? And my other point is about probationers, the number of probationers that are leaving, and obviously it's varying, but there has been a spike. And I just wondered whether or not we're, reviewing the exit surveys to find out what has really triggered some of those, those patterns, and how that might then be fed in either to the training or the processes that we're adopting for recruitment. Thank you.
Important points there, Nikki.
So I'm conscious that one of my colleagues on the call, Heather Cunningham, has done quite a lot of analysis of probationers, because her team actually undertook the exit interviews for probationers leaving for a period of time to understand that better. So I'll invite Heather in to give her observations on the reasons for probationers leaving. Separate to that, I'll answer the first part of your question before bringing Heather in, if that's okay, which is obviously around, as you've rightly pointed out, we do have an extensive wellbeing support, and the question around whether we're getting it focused right to ensure that we're building capacity in the workforce. I think I'm absolutely confident within the modified duties space that we are pointing people to the right support, we're assessing whether they're taking the right support, and we are equally ensuring that we're pointing them to budgeted established roles that ensure that we maximise capacity. So I'm absolutely confident that process ensures that we are making sure that our workforce is as efficient and effective as possible. But I'm also conscious that Damien's doing a lot of work in this as well. So I'll bring Heather in, and then Damien can maybe add to what I've just said. So Heather.
Thanks, Nikki. Angela, thank you for the question. I guess just to paint the picture a wee bit, we have still have under 5% attrition in our officers. So overall, we still have, I think it's about 4.8% of officers leave. Of that, about 63% are retiring. We have 3% who are moving to transferees, moving to other forces, and we have about 4% who are leaving, who are not regretted leavers. So overall that, probably about 29% are obviously leaving for other opportunities, and the majority of them are in the 5 to 10 year service. With regards to the 2 years and the probationers, the recruitment process, I think, is quite robust. We still have about an 82% decline rate. So of those applications that are coming in, we accept between 18 to 20%. They go through the full process, but we do have a high decline rate, which I think shows how robust the process is. But we are hiring potential. And I think the 2 years, within that 2 years, we do the exit surveys of the people who are leaving. Not everybody will speak to us, so it's our positive action and inclusion team that do that. Not everybody, once they've put their notice in, sometimes it's hard to interact with them. But of the people that we've spoken to, there's reasons for leaving. The shift work's not working for them. They don't like working weekends. You know, it varies from people to people, but genuinely nothing of concern that we think that we could do differently before we hired them. We highlight the shifts to them, we highlight weekend working, we explain to them how difficult it is, you know, not spending time with your family and friends, particularly if they're coming from a role where they worked Monday to Friday 9 to 5. So that's the reasons for it. There's nothing that surprises us. Genuinely, some people decide actually it's time to go to university, further careers in other ways. But genuinely, we haven't got, and we do report on it as well, obviously internally, as to what those leavers are saying to us after we conduct that survey. So we do only get involved in the 2 year probationary period of calling them and speaking to them informally, just to see if there's anything we could do differently in recruitment. Was there anything that we missed out? And also from a force perspective, is there something that, you know, we're missing?
That's a great insight, Heather. Thanks for that. You did mention, we've got Damien speaking to a paper just after this, but is there anything at the moment, Damien, you would like to contribute?
Yeah, just to support Nikki's comments as well, I think the big thing that we've needed to do is to widen our focus into the prevent and the mitigate space as well as the undo. You know, so when somebody gets to a point of being modified, I think we need to be engaging earlier. We need to be intervening earlier and having earlier intervention. So you'll see with our action plan and the work we're doing with colleagues across HR, it is trying to widen that focus to prevent and mitigate that people don't get to these points, or they can be supported in terms of their line management and their understanding of their own health and well-being earlier. So that early intervention, that early engagement is key for us in terms of that broader approach.
Thanks, Damien. And Angela, is there anything you want to follow?
No, that's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Obviously, there's a trend there which is upwards around psychological distress in terms of exits. Is there any thing you'd like to comment around that?
Yes, very quickly, Chair. So Damien mentioned the kind of prevent agenda. So you will be aware from your years of service yourself of TRIM and other mechanisms, but we are now moving into that prevent. How do we teach people the tools so they can reduce the impact of psychological trauma as well, which is obviously stage 1 of that prevent strategy, and Damien's team's doing a lot of work in that space. Hopefully that gives you some assurance.
Okay, thank you. Alistair, hey, can I come to you now? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And again, thanks to you, Nikki. There is so much in this workforce dashboard. And there's no doubt that you know, by and large, we have an excellent workforce within Police Scotland, both officers and staff. And I do not doubt either all the work that is going on to ensure that we do have a thriving workforce. But when you look at the dashboard, there's areas where you can clearly see that the workforce are under pressure, under stress. There's strong indicators of that. So I just wonder, to try and set it into a strategic context, if you could update us on the progress that's being made towards the strategic workforce plan, towards an operational workforce plan, the current thinking about getting the balance right in terms of the skills mix in the organisation between staff and warranted officers. These big strategic challenges that can set all these indicators in context, and then maybe understand what they're actually telling us and how we can make improvements.
Which is a huge question, and I know that Ethne will touch on some of that later in the meeting. In terms of what we are doing in regards to the capacity build, the operational workforce plan and the balance. So at present, we are looking at the governance provisions to bring an awful lot of different strands of work together. We are about to set up, and forgive me, I'm going to call it a strategic workforce and design. I don't think the name has been settled on, Chair, so please don't quote me on that. But there will be a workforce panel that will bring senior leaders together to do a number of things. So first of all, there's the kind of tactical aspects that you're talking about in terms of that operationalization. So it will bring those elements under one set of governance and plan, and then there's the wider sort of skills balance work that Ethne's doing, which has obviously got a longer timeline to that, and that's got again several pieces of work under that, like police officer profile, CV, all of those kind of different elements, including my career, performance management, how we manage that out. So and as I say, I'll leave that to Ethne to cover at a later stage. In terms of that will give us that oversight of capacity across the organisation and all the moving parts. In addition to that, I think everyone's aware that in terms of the capacity build, this is not new to us. We've been looking at and trying to provide for that frontline capacity, because the express pressure, I think, from the comments we get back from workforce is around that very frontline capacity and disruption. So the Chief has actively pushed into that area with programmes like FMM, where we look to deploy more resources out to the front line at busy periods, and my colleague Alan Waddell's been very involved in that and driving that forward. In addition to that kind of capacity at peak periods, we've got the work ongoing in regards to modified duties to ensure that all people are in budgeted established posts. So again, that's all about that capacity creation and pushing into that space. So it is genuinely a subject that I could probably talk all day on, but I think those are the key components, is that we're getting that governance in place. We are having the conversation about all the moving parts to it and the plan around about that. We've operationalised through FMM, and also we are looking at big programmes like our Policing for Our Communities, where we're putting resources, what those resources will do, what that means for the communities of Scotland in terms of that push into the absolute build, so as that we know where we're putting our people to get the best bang for our buck as well. So there's a massive amount going on in this area, but I can give you the assurance that the governance is coming all together in that one.
That's
So
really
I'll leave it there.
That's really encouraging, Nikki. Just remind everyone, FMM, there's new members on the call, and obviously it's a public call, so you might want to demystify that acronym for them.
So that's our force mobilisation model, and I think Alan Waddell's maybe going to say something on the operational front about that. It's his baby.
Not sure I would use that description, Nikki, but I'll give you a 1 minute snapshot. So force mobilisation model, as an organisation like us, we have a lot of our resource working Monday to Friday hours for obvious reasons, which means that at the weekend with less officers available. Chief Constable was really clear that we need to try and rebalance that, so that if we have a significant major event, we've got increased capacity to the weekends to try and address that. At the same time, we as an organisation cancel a lot of rest days at the weekend, either to deal with events, large scale protest, and with the focus upon a thriving workforce, this is an effort to address that. In really simple terms, what it means is we ask officers up to the rank of inspector that are currently working Monday to Friday to work a Saturday and a Sunday once every 5-week pattern. And we're currently working through the organisation in that space, and we're about to start with colleagues in SCD. At the moment, that's given us circa 200 extra officers every weekend, which might not seem like a lot, but actually in terms of cancelling rest days, being able to resource significant events and just to have that increased capacity is a real step forward, and SCD joining will make a difference there. Chair, that's a quick oversight of
that's really
mobilisation model.
That's really helpful, Alan. Thanks very much. I'm going to come now to the Staff Association and Trade Union colleagues for any reflections. Dave?
Yeah, sorry, Chair, I was trying to find the button to raise my hand there. We obviously welcome the dashboard. I think from a personal point of view, from a Unison's point of view, we often find the dashboard a little bit confusing because it's a lot of the elements that are expanded on tends to be very much officer centric rather than police staff centric, or even just sort of splitting them up into two. So from that point of view, that's an observation. Things like the psychological disorders remain the leading cause of absence is still a concern for us from that point of view. But I think someone else picked up on it that that stress-related absence is more about a structural indicator. It's just not a seasonal fluctuation. It's something that's happened throughout the year, and just obviously modified duties is engagement with the Equality Act and reasonable adjustment duties, and it shouldn't just be framed purely as a deployability issue. I think one thing we obviously welcome the high occupancy rates from a police staff point of view, but what the dashboard doesn't reflect is that abstraction or long-term absence or the workload intensity, which I think someone else picked up on as well. So that would be my only comments on this paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. They're all fair reflections, and they've come up with various points of discussion as well, so there's a focus on that. I understand that. Emma from the Federation.
Thanks, Chair. Yep. We find the dashboard as a useful tool, or certainly I do, in terms of trying to sift our way through. There are a number of different things obviously feature there, and in terms of the disability piece, quite often the policies and processes are there to support people and to use that. I think it's just sometimes people's understanding of how to apply these things, also balanced with what is reasonable, like Nikki said, because quite often people will have ideas of what they deem to be reasonable and think it's almost, a list of, well, here are the things I must have. But actually, a lot of the time we spend time with members explaining it is about what is reasonable and actually also what is reasonable for the organisation. So some tricky conversations in there, and I think because there's a lot of focus in this area, which perhaps there's not been for a number of years for different reasons, I think it's just a challenging conversation and landscape to have, those conversations with people. But we're certainly supporting HR and line managers across the country to try and get these things right for people and obviously keep them in the workplace or get them back into the workplace.
Thank you, Emma. I just reiterate from my own perspective, chairing this committee and the engagement I've had, that both the Federation and trade unions' involvement in these tricky areas has always been proportionate and actually very professional and supportive. So record my own appreciation for that.
Thank you.
Colleagues and the board members, before I move off this item, is there any follow-up, or are you quite content to move on? Thank you. We'll go then to item 3.2, which is a health, safety and wellbeing report. We've got two colleagues who are going to speak to various parts of the paper. Don McLean, the Health and Safety Manager, and Damien, who we spoke to earlier, Damien Shannon, on who's the HR lead for wellbeing. This is the second biannual thematic report. It incorporates ill health, retirement, injured on duty reporting, which is really important. So is it yourself first, Dawn, that's going to speak?
It is, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So I will cover the main parts that are under my remit as Health and Safety Manager. So I'd like to draw your attention to slide 5, where we've made some significant progress in terms of our strategic priorities. And we're also currently in the process of reflecting on the work that has been done, and also where we want to build momentum on that in the upcoming iteration, because this was a 3-year plan, which we're in our final year of. And we are likely going into 27-30 of our strategic plan, looking to work really closely internally in partnership working with organisational development, specifically Ethne's team, in relation to things like onboarding and the importance of that from early engagement with new members of staff and officers, and what that needs to look like from day one to retirement in terms of health and safety and well-being. We're also working very closely at the moment together on occupational health matters, and again, just to go back to the conversation around psychological harms, we've also recently just reviewed our organisational risk assessment for stress in line with the HSE management standards. So I have a meeting in the calendar for the next couple of weeks to speak with the Health and Wellbeing Manager in relation to that. We also want to build on the positive impact that health and safety has brought and can bring to operations in the pre-planning stages, as highlighted in slide 20 in relation to Op Moonbeam and the difference that that has made. Bringing your attention to slide 9, we are in constant communication with our colleagues as well in estates, re-compliance, and we are also aware though of the challenges around the contractor management, which I believe is one of the focus areas of our new Chief Officer for Estates, Donna Valance. So we collaborate very frequently in relation to how we keep on top of that compliance around our estate. We're also in receipt now in terms of, if we go to the accident incident data, we're in receipt now of much richer data from Scope. We've added new categories of things that were frequently being recorded as other, and this is helping us to support changes in operational safety training and also in the uniform and equipment needs required for officers and staff as they go out and do their roles. The number of reportable injuries has seen an increase, a decrease, and what I mean by that is RIDDOR reportable injuries, but our reports are increasing, and I think we can take that as being the fact that people are recognising the importance of letting us know when things actually happen. And we are also currently in the testing stage of our new accident incident near miss forum. So hopefully we will have that for the new financial year going into 26-27, because I think it will help encourage even more reporting. And also, as well as that, hopefully it'll encourage that consistency because the new system is far more intuitive for the user to be able to give us that information more definitively. The health and safety management system, as far as policies, procedure and guidance, is progressing, and we are making some real traction in that area. This year we've revised the health and safety policy, the fire safety policy, and we've introduced the workplace inspection and PEEP guidance. Our next publication is the control of substances hazardous to health, which is going to have a really profound effect on our outstanding recommendations that were made in the BDO audit in relation to dangerous goods. And just finally, I'd just like to highlight slide 21, where we have successfully concluded the recommendations that were made by HSE last year on their visit on searches in custody. I'll hand over to Damien, if that's okay, Chair, and then happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Don. I'll focus predominantly on the wellbeing activity section, so 27, slide 27 onwards. As already been discussed in terms of occupational health, the engagement on a monthly basis is over 400 referrals, with over 1,300 across the quarter for us. We're trying to get into a space of analysing the data more deeply in terms of occupational health, and two of the focus areas that we're looking at is the average time to referral, as we talked about earlier, which links into that preventative and mitigate and early intervention space, and also musculoskeletal conditions. As Nikki had mentioned as well, we do have a workshop day with our Optima Health colleagues coming up in the middle of March, where we'll be taking a deeper dive into aspects such as this, but also looking at that duty modifications element in terms of how we can be more proactive in the space, and to connect ourselves with the clinical approach that they take to ensure that we're complementing that and supplementing that with the right information in terms of our line managers in particular. In relation to physiotherapy, you'll see some impact data provided there as well in terms of days saved, which is calculated through the predicted actual absence, or the predicted absence against actual absence, and what that potentially could save in terms of our time. This is a space as well with, you can see the absence figures around musculoskeletal. If we feel that if we can get people into our physiotherapy service to get that short to medium term intervention and treatment, it can have a real impact on returning people to work a lot quicker if indeed they are absent. In relation to your wellbeing assessment, this is our mental health MOT. So really dipping our toe into that area of psychological surveillance that Dawn has mentioned, and we're hoping to expand this area in the coming months as well in terms of what we do. The Your Wellbeing Assessment is open to all officers and staff, and across February to December 2025, we had 962 officers that completed the survey. If anybody emerges as an amber or red, they will have a proactive approach to them in terms of an offer of additional support, and we've seen 39% of those that were have been referred on to counselling service. In terms of the mental health space, and EAP is probably our biggest provision there in terms of that support. Across this 2025, we've had over 1,500 contacts with EAP, with over 1,000 progressing through the pathway into some more therapies or assessment. This for us is crucial in terms of what we've done with the contract in terms of expanding our offering to EMDR and CBT. And you can see on slide 34 some of the impact data. And for us, this is really crucial in terms of looking at those outcomes after therapy in terms of our officers. And of course, 20 officers and staff. In terms of 2025, we've seen over 86% have had a positive change due to the therapies. Within EAP, we have very much changed our contract from the 6-session model. It's very much person-centered now around the need that they have and what they require in terms of support. We will provide for them, so they have access to a more person-centered, a more clinically led, and what's appropriate in terms of that clinical support. They will receive that support. Appendix B has an update against our action plan, which is our focus across all of the wellbeing team, and in terms of what we're focusing on delivering, that links to our strategic commitment. And it is really for us, there's been progress made now in relation to our restructure and having additional resource. We can see a lot more of the areas are up and active, and we would like to think that as we go through the months, we will have a greater progress update for you against the actions outlined. Like Dawn, happy to take any question relevant to any of the matters raised.
Thank you very much. It's a really comprehensive report and very much welcome. So go straight to Alistair Hay.
Thank you, and thanks to both Don and Damon there and their teams, you know, for all the work that's going on. Again, I've got no doubt in my mind about the progress that's being made within health, safety and well-being, and it's clearly documented within this report. So commend everybody for that. There's two areas I'd just like to start some questions around. Don, you went straight away to slide number 5 there, and you spoke to us about the health and safety strategic plan and the current one's coming to an end and I'm sure we'll get a full report and evaluation and lessons learned on that. And we've got the upcoming 27-30 plan. And there's a lot of progress being made there. Out of the 20 improvement areas, it's looking like only 3 are going to be carried forward. But it does indicate that these are going to be carried forward for perhaps a number of reasons. Could be funding, it could be procurement issues, it could be research issues. So my question really is, given that we've got legal responsibilities, there's big financial implications, potentially around health and safety, and we've also got that moral responsibility to our workforce. Could you expand a little bit more on these funding, procurement, and research issues, why these things have not been actioned? Because it would worry me quite a lot if I know there's pressures on funding, but if health and safety issues were not being appropriately funded. That's my first question. And my second question would really be towards, I think, Damien. And we've spoken a lot already today about well-being, and we've spoken about, we've touched on ill health retirement within the organisation. And injuries on duty. But if you look at ill health retirements, it tells you in the report that the average time is 10.4 months. But a big part of that is the appointment of the selected medical practitioner, the SMP. And I know they then got to link in to specialist reports, to GP reports, and all that type of stuff. And you've made big progress, because I think a couple of years ago we were looking at well over a year in terms of this. So just it still seems a long time to appoint that person. So I wonder if you could just explain that a little bit more to us, and the progress that has been made there. And then my last bit really would, if you could just expand a little bit on the work of the Trauma, Health and Wellbeing Action Plan. Again, we've spoken a lot today about mental health issues, and specifically here, I think we're talking about, in terms of ill health retirement, PTSD. So just the work that's actually going on behind that. So a number of questions there across what is, as the chair said, a very comprehensive report.
Well, can I suggest we go with the health and safety aspects of that first with Dawn?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alistair. Just to give you some assurances, in relation to the points that I was raising there, is that sometimes some of this work takes a little bit longer in the process, and just to highlight, there are avenues that I'm exploring in terms of funding avenues to get some of this, the items that I'm referring to, such as a more robust health and safety management system, in terms of an actual system, for example, that we have to make sure aligns with a lot of our ISO security standards, etc., etc. So there's a bit of a procurement process that, whilst if I did start it this year, it may cross over into the 27-30 strategic plan, based on the amount of work that needs to be put into that. From the research point of view, I am looking at the moment to make sure that we're not making decisions based on just what we think we need, but actually what I'm looking at is, so I'm using the RPE as an example here, where we had a policy that didn't quite fit the organisation at the time, but to get that as robust as it needs to be, we need to make sure that we are identifying what the actual risks and hazards are, and we are actually in the process at the moment of procuring that through, but these things do take some time, and it's not that we're not doing it and the funding isn't available, it's just the time that it might take to get it to fruition. So just to give you those assurances. Also, just to make you aware as well that Kevin Ditcham, who's on the call today, is massively supporting me in that strategic piece with the research, etc. as well. So And I'm also looking to put some bids into our transformation teams as well for some of that support in terms of funding. Hope that answers your question.
No, it definitely does, and I also, said you could see from the report about the significant progress that is being made, and it's just to ensure that we maintain that momentum in the organisation.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you, Damien.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. Just to address the question in relation to IHR and IOD initially, in terms of, just to add more context to it, so we've identified, or we've highlighted, that it's 10.4 months for the full process at the moment. Last year, for the same time period, that was 10.75 months, so there's an improvement there. But probably most significantly, we've seen a real increase in terms of the numbers going through the process. So for the same period in 2024, it would have been 34 going through IHR, and that's increased to 64 gone through IHR. So there's been improvements and efficiencies made across the processes. But I think for us, as well as the SMP resource, which we challenge our providers, Optima Health, on a weekly basis around the provision of that, also the provision of further medical evidence from our GPs and specialist reports in particular can slow down the process in terms of us engaging with and chasing up and invoicing indeed from our GP surgeries, etc., to get that further medical evidence. So we do have a weekly call with our providers in terms of that. We have HR colleagues that work on the IHR and IOD process on a weekly basis, and we are doing more in terms of analysing the figures as well. So reassurance that we're working in that space to do more, but it's definitely an area that we're seeing more demand and traffic coming through, which is probably impacting the timescales as well as those other factors as mentioned.
Thanks, Damien. Also, you can take that hand start. Okay, move on then. Gary Forsyth.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And forgive me if I've missed this in the report. I couldn't see any reference to it, but my question's around sort of proactive, scheduled, supportive intervention for key roles. And I wondered what our performance was like in those areas. And given that historically it's normally pretty good where it's taking place, is there any consideration around broadening the scope of that to impact on the areas where we're seeing high levels of cumulative PTSD in the organisation, to take a bit more of a preventative approach in that regard?
Damien, are you able to come back on that? Thank
Yes,
you.
happy to pick up that question, and probably that links in with the question that Alistair had asked around the trauma support aspect as well. But Gary, just to address your question, we do have a resilience assessment which is available for higher risk roles. At the moment, we're doing some work in that space to identify a role matrix around how we get to define our high risk roles, and indeed what are the factors. So is that the hazards and risks that they experience on a daily basis, the frequency of trauma that they experience, the intensity of trauma that they experience. So for us, we do have classified roles at the moment. They can have that 12 monthly clinician support, which is a one-to-one support that is available to them. I would have to say the engagement is varied across the areas that we have. So we're trying to work with areas to get that as more part of that preventative and mitigate aspect of things. But certainly as we progress the work around the psychological surveillance as well with Dawn, and in terms of making sure we adhere to legislation in that space, it is something we would hope to have a greater adherence to and a greater provision within at the moment. Just to link back, Alistair, in terms of your question around the trauma work that we're doing and the action plan element of that, we're trying to look at that from a trauma pathway aspect, right from is the conversation being had between colleagues, between line managers and colleagues, right through to if you have a concern or an issue that you receive the right support at the right time, and everything in between, to make sure that we have functioning programs such as TRIM, the right resource around it, etc. But also then you've got the support and mitigating elements and preventative elements such as our screening tools or surveillance, etc. That's a person-centered approach that we're hoping to take with it, but also what we're looking at is more of a systematic approach, which means that we're not waiting for people to put their hand up and say, I'm struggling, or there's a concern or an issue. It actually is, can we start to look at elements such as a trauma tracker, which works with our STORM systems to be able to track traumatic incidents that our people are experiencing. So then we have a systematic and a person-centered approach that we're not waiting, but we could be more proactive. For example, if somebody has experienced or been in contact with fatal incidents over a period of time, that we can approach them in terms of support that can be more proactive in that sense. So work is ongoing in terms of what that trauma pathway looks like. Individual elements, we have a trim improvement plan at the moment, but hopefully as the months go by, we come back to the committee here, we'll have a greater update for you in terms of progress against some of those elements.
That's really helpful, thank you. Can I go to our Trade Union and Staff Association colleagues now? Dave?
Yep, thanks, Chair. I welcome the report and the contents of the report. I think from a Unison point of view, we are concerned about that high occupational referral rate. You know, about 400 people per month, and the utilisation of the EAP. Where we obviously welcome that those facilities are there for people to access. We do wonder if that's just a reflection of the workforce pressure that's been applied on staff. And I agree with some of the earlier comments about the early intervention and preventative measures really need that sort of greater emphasis when it comes to actually looking to get support for staff and for officers as well. It's not just when we talk about psychological trauma, we're not just talking about the trauma of attending certain events, whether it be a police officer or staff in forensics or a call handler listening to traumatic events. There's other workforce pressures that need that intervention as well. So a line manager carrying out that early intervention and getting that early referral into occupational health or to the EAP or to trim, whatever it happens to be, needs to be looked at. I think from a well-being point of view, we welcome the work that's being done on well-being, but it really needs to be resourced and not just being managed through that intervention alone. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Dave. No doubt your comments will be reflected upon by those that are presenting the reports as well. Emma, can I come to you now? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Again, linking in closely with Damien and the team across, certainly we deal primarily a lot with the IHR and the IODs, and the numbers are definitely increasing. I think for us, it's important to make sure that when we're directing people into that IHR process, that they have completed that treatment journey, because we have seen a number of officers coming back out of the IHR process where the SNP will say, well, actually, you're too early into this process, which causes issues at the other side. So that's certainly a conversation that we have with members who approach us for advice and guidance on that IHR process. And we would just like to work with the service to make sure that whilst it is a direction that may be a suitable option, the person needs to be ready now to go on to that journey, or they become stuck within that process and the process becomes drawn out because the medical evidence and supporting documentation for the selected medical practitioner is not there, not yet available. So the person finds himself in a really difficult position. So we are working with the service on that.
Thanks for that, Emma. I recognise what you're saying there in terms of our own involvement in it at the various stages, and I'm acutely aware of that as well. So thank you. Just before I conclude this item, there's a couple of points. The report is greatly enhanced and given us real insight over some areas of critical business. It's really important that we get trend analysis if we start to develop that report. So we talked about it, David, there about the numbers going through increasing. It's not just about the timelines, etc. And seeing that over a longitudinal line is really informative. So hopefully we can see the report continue to develop in that. Around estates and compliance, Donna, it just reinforced the expectations that there's a clear assurance that planned tests and assessments are being carried out and the resultant risks are being addressed. So just an emphasis on that area going forward. And the 3-year health and safety plan is starting, the next one's June 2027, but it's important we get a closing report for the current plan. So those are 3 areas I would ask you to reflect on in future reporting coming to this committee. So we then move on to item 3.3, which is our annual talent report. Ethne Graham, the Head of Organisational Development. Ethne, can I come to yourself?
Yes, thanks, Chair. So I'll present the annual talent and performance report to you. This is the first thematic report on this topic, and it should establish a baseline for future structured updates. I will take the paper as read, but call out a couple of items just for narrative. There were multiple drivers, including HMICS findings, workforce feedback, lack of consistency, and most importantly, the lowering year-on-year buy-in to this process that indicates strongly that my career is not delivering its intended impact and required revision. The redesign of that my career conversation and structure is now underway. It is evolving to include really structured objective setting for officers and staff, the inclusion of personal development plans, and feedback mechanisms, which in the pilot will include light touch RAG indicators of performance. These 3 key items and additions aim to make development conversations more meaningful and consistent across the organisation. We're also making a move to increase the frequency of these conversations to twice yearly so that it doesn't feel like a one and done conversation, which aims to improve continuous development and more timely input into performance indicators, development requests, etc., and improve the quality of relationships between managers and staff. The pilot of that new approach begins in April and will run until March next year. It's a very structured pilot which will test the objective setting PDPs and feedback tools, but will also be evaluated throughout from pulse surveys, experience surveys, and focus groups. There will be a really strong emphasis on leadership and the CVF alignment and also readiness. So we have just launched the updated CVF 2024 and the newly adopted leadership standards, and we'll be integrating the revised role profiles and job evaluation work coming out of our HR colleagues team. There is significant investment of time, energy, and structure being made into building capability to engage with this process through training, guidance, and tools. So we are strengthening the guidance toolkits and intranet resources for the process. In the first instance, we're going to be streamlining and simplifying those. We will also update the My Career modules, but also the People Management Development Programme, which will include integration of wellbeing and inclusivity education with a focus on these training and education packages to build managerial confidence in engaging with performance conversations. We have enhanced our mentoring and coaching resources as well. And as Nikki mentioned in her update earlier, in an answer earlier, there are new modules on effective conversations delivered by our HR colleagues, which launched in December 2025. And these focus on sessions that have had around 600 managers, indicating the appetite for these structured sessions as well. We are going to look to digitize some of these as well, so that there's early interventions and just-in-time learning, but we'll not replace the live or face-to-face sessions. We'll just offer an additional so that people can access this asynchronously. Also within the paper is outlined the early approach to a coherent talent management framework. Our approach to talent management refers not to an additional process, but to a unified system-wide approach to integrate developing, supporting and retaining people who will drive Police Scotland's long-term capability and resilience. The framework will unify existing pockets of very good practice in talent management, but seek to strengthen strategic talent planning and staff and officer understanding of what that means in real terms. Leadership development, so quality and accessibility of interventions, including a focus on lifelong learning, so not always abstraction learning. and succession and capability pipeline planning. More importantly, this will be the development of transparent developmental pathways for all staff and officers aligned to the My Career options of maintain and develop in role, develop in your current role, or develop to lead. We will also look at consistent identification and development of our potential. The paper indicates as well the strategic and local level elements that the framework are going to integrate. I'll not go through those again. Also with the talent management, the delivery of this will follow a very structured progression with discovery, purpose, design, and then pilot, stretching from Q1 2026 all the way through to Q1, Q2 2027. The paper also highlights important organizational risks associated with talent and performance. Some of these are the current system on which My Career is documented, the digital limitations of our scope system, cultural adoption. Of course, success of performance management and talent depends very heavily on behavioral change. So I hope that there's some assurance provided in the strengthening of the capability building and training elements of that. Building leadership capability within the ecosystem, not referred to in this paper, but within the learning and development thematic presented at a different committee, and also data quality and interconnectedness. We are aware that performance management and talent management doesn't happen in a silo, but integrates across your voice matters, our well-being data, our recruitment and retention data as well. So we do have that as a part of phase 2 to understand how those different data systems can overlap. The combined paper also indicates the changes that we're expected to deliver through these approaches and the impacts for the organisation that we're hoping to see. But I'm happy to pause there and take any questions from the committee.
There's a lot of activity in the area, so thanks very much for that. Can I offer it for questions from board members at this time? I'll come to Angela Leach first.
Thank you. Thanks, Ethan. I think I really welcome this report. I think it's really comprehensive and it sets out quite clearly what the aspirations are. So a lot of work ahead, but it seems really logical, so well done. Can I just ask on a couple of points of assurance, really? So talent management is a fundamental part of the strategic workforce plan that we'll be looking at and talking about later on in the committee. So I just wonder about how it will align. And in particular, there's a reference in this report and in the pay and reward report that's coming up later on the redesign of job profiles, which again is a fundamental part of, you know, making sure that we have a sustainable workforce for the future, both in terms of staff and officers. So I'm just looking for that reassurance that there is going to be an alignment between that it's not going to be a short-term fix just now that might then have to be rerun with all the engagement that needs to be done with that at a subsequent point. And my final point is really on the pilots. I think it's a really robust process that you've set out, and I think that, you know, dovetailing it with the end of My Career as it is just now is a sensible way forward. I wonder if you can expand on the areas for the pilot. Again, just seeking some assurance on the areas that have been chosen will test the approach that we're taking and provide effective learning for us. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Yeah, absolutely, Angela, and thank you. Yeah, recognising and acknowledging there is a lot of work that's happening in this space. I'll answer your second question first. I will provide the areas of the pilot. They're being confirmed by the end of this month for which areas are going to be piloted, and I can provide that in 4 days, if that's okay. In terms of the redesign of job profiles and alignment, yes, some assurance, of course, that we are working really closely with members of Nikki's team in that space. We're trying to understand exactly what the job evaluation project and process aims to achieve so that we can integrate CVF and leadership standards within our talent management approach. Nikki, I'm not sure if you want to give further comments on the job evaluation piece.
Yes, so just now our current descriptions all align with the CVF, so we're updating that work to ensure that it stays consistent. In terms of the role profiles for police officers, we're again using the CVF and the system used by England and Wales, and we're going through that process of revised review in line with the CVF. So what that does mean is that all our descriptions can be used then for common purpose through our discussions on performance, our discussions on recruitment, and our discussions in pay and reward. So we're really joining that whole landscape up by doing those exercises. So hopefully that gives you some assurance that we're absolutely joined up on it. And further assurance, we are working obviously, as you would anticipate, with the business. So Policing for Our Communities project is going through obviously a review of how they're delivering policing to the communities. We are working with the leaders in those areas to make sure those profiles are fit for purpose, they work for the business, and they will work for all those corporate areas as well and functions. So hopefully that will help.
Okay, thanks for that.
Sorry, Chair, may I just
Yes.
answer one more element of this? One of the key pieces around talent management is really going to be about upskilling and educating the organisation to understand what it is, what it means. Within the leadership ecosystem, again, not referenced in this paper, but in a different one, we will also be including case studies from different levels of the competency value framework to give indications of what those different levels of competencies, talents, and identifications look like at different levels across the organisation. The competency value framework is by necessity quite generic and broad in terms of its explanations of how to indicate your competency at different levels. And what we'll be trying to do with those case studies and with those networks is bring that to life in various different roles.
Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you. Tom, just one thing.
Yes.
I mean, I do absolutely understand the importance of this, and critically the alignment with regular feedback and well-being amongst staff. I think that's really important. But I'll maybe come back to it later on just to make sure that we are dovetailing this in with the wider strategic workforce plan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Angela. Can I go to Gary Forsyth now, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ethne, for the paper. I suppose as I was reading your paper, I was reflecting on my 30 plus years of public sector service across policing and the NHS, and I think there probably somewhere in there is a sweet spot where you have high completion rates and a universally respected programme where people value the contribution it can make to their career and personal development. But I'm not sure I've ever seen it in that 30 plus year across those two sectors. But then I also think that this is a key leadership responsibility. And my nervousness is really that whilst we search for a like transactional managerial program that's supported by the software and the processes, we somewhere lose sight of the value and the importance of that key leadership responsibility. And you've touched a little bit on it in that leadership ecosystem that you talked about, Ethne, but I suppose there are things that we can do in setting organizational and leadership expectations around, don't come and talk to me about thinking about a promotion board at any level in the organization unless you've got a really compelling story about how you regularly have a conversation with your staff about how they're doing, what's troubling them, what they need help with, how they're seeking to develop, and what we can do to support them in that. And can I get some assurance that those sorts of things are going on alongside the development of the programme, which I get is important. I don't want to undermine the importance of having a really robust transactional process monitoring system that we can track and everything else. But fundamentally, I think the conversation is by far and away the most important part of any sort of like, appraisal system or just that effective leadership intervention on a daily basis.
Absolutely, Gary. Yes, thank you. And I think we're falling victim to the separation out of the leadership ecosystem and the performance and talent space here. If I can share a very recent example of where this is working really well together. Our recent intake of the Accelerated Leadership Pathway candidates has included exactly that. Individuals coming forward with nominations have been provided with coaching. There was an expectation that they had engaged with managerial and performance-related conversations, and feedback had been provided. So this is something that's happening already in the early stages of leadership programs. In addition to that, moving from one section of the leadership pathway to the next section of the leadership pathway, we'll have readiness checks, for lack of a better term at this moment in time. That's integrated with good talent management principles. So that's about compliance with or engagement with performance management conversations, managerial conversations, and your own continuous professional development. So we are integrating that across the leadership pathway and have engaged specifically with our senior executive team on the performance management approach. This has been agreed and reviewed by them, and they are supportive of it. We've also integrated the leadership standards, the new leadership standards from the College of Policing as well. And that's going to be integrated into upcoming executive leadership development that we are continuing to work on separately to the performance and talent piece. I hope that gives you some assurance that it is happening. It's not necessarily referenced in this paper, but it is happening.
Stephanie.
Thanks.
Thanks very much for that. Can I come to Amina Khan, please?
Thank you. Just wanted to ask, I suppose, given some of the challenges that emerged from my career and that kind of utilisation of that system, going into this, piloting this new approach, have there been any kind of lessons learned from that, the deployment of that, I suppose, approach, for want of a better word, that's informed some of the thinking around the pilot, and also I suppose you touched on the point of linking back to the other reports and kind of area work streams that are in place, and I suppose I'm thinking back to the Your Voice report and some of the comments that emerged about perceived inequalities or bias in some of the processes related to career progression, and just wondering how that kind of might be addressed by some of the new actions and pilot work that's being taken forward.
Yeah, great question, Amina. Thank you. Again, and I don't want to be too general about this, but leadership, talent, and performance are all one team, and they're working in squads to ensure that all of their different approaches are connected together. They work together closely alongside Damien's team and also my ED&I stream. We're not separating out these requirements. We're integrating them within how we conduct the process, the conversation, the training, and the toolkits that come alongside them. If you would like to, I can provide some data regarding the first part of your question. That's absolutely fine. I don't have it to hand, but I can show you some of the evaluation metrics from my career, etc. The long and the short of it is that it felt like an overly bureaucratic process. It's not necessarily especially user-friendly. And more importantly, certainly from my perspective as an OD specialist, the impact or the value of engaging with it is not tangible to individuals. So one of the things that we're really careful to do within the My Career pilot is to link that into pockets or baskets of development and opportunities that can be available to you. For instance, if you were to maintain in your current role, it's kind of over to you to decide what it is that you're going to do to develop within that role. And what we're trying to do is make a more navigable space for individuals to understand what that means, what that can look like, and how they can access that opportunity.
That's great. Thank you so much. And it would be helpful to see some of that data. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Sure.
But perhaps we could put that report through the board services and be put out to members as a briefing note from this Esther, so thank you for that. Can you move on to Alistair Hay?
Yeah, thanks for the report there, Edna. So much in it, and I think early signs of that significant progress is being made on this. I think what's come across for me today, I think the word that's been used a lot is integration, and that talent management has many parts in the organisation that all has to come together. But even reading the report, the challenge for me is navigating through it. So if I'm joining this organisation or I'm part of this organisation, how are you helping people to navigate through the complexity of it? So from that point of entry to point of exit from the organisation, you know, managing them within role, giving them the development opportunities, having identified the talent to move to the next roles, perhaps in the organisation, etc. It's still quite complex to navigate. So I wonder what your thinking is around that.
I'm delighted you asked, Alistair. Yeah, again, also not in this report because it's happened in the last several weeks in between the creation of this report and the committee. The team are building a site, for a SharePoint site, essentially. This is one of the earliest ways that we can start to help people have a roadmap and understand how they can move from one place to another. Just to be clear, I understand that the answer to everything isn't to digitize it. We obviously need to engage with the conversations and the building of the culture, but it's very difficult to navigate your way through something if you don't know how or where it is all signposted. Now, the good news is that the vast, overwhelming majority of information that you need as a staff member, as an officer, or as a manager of the before exists already on our intranet site. It's just sometimes complex to figure out where to go, what to do with it. So the first and earliest method that we're developing is a manager resource, which talks a person or a manager through from hiring all the way through to end of contract, with some narrative around why this element is important and what support exists for you. And within that, or embedded within that, will be those options. So it'll be like, so you've had a conversation with a member of your staff, they want to develop in current role, click here. Then it's aligned to the competency value frameworks, levels 1, 2, and 3. Click whichever level is appropriate, and under that provides you all of the CPD, opportunity, links to the wellbeing areas, ED&I considerations, continuous professional development, and leadership pathway opportunities that are available. I know that it might sound perhaps sort of like very early or a very simple intervention, but even having that kind of a resource to go to as your roadmap can be really helpful in building your confidence as a manager to engage with those conversations. And if you want, we can include an oversight of that in the next report because it will be built by then.
Yeah, I'm delighted to hear that work that's going on, and I'm glad I've asked the question there. And you know, if the chair and others, I would welcome it. I would definitely welcome getting an overview of what's been built and what will be in place.
We're very happy either, you know, like not within a committee structure if you want to, but I'm very happy to arrange a tour of the current draft of that site as well. That's no problem.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. I've no doubt board services will be in touch with you to facilitate the board involvement in that. Yeah. Appreciate that. Dawn, you've put your hand up just now. Is it relevant to this conversation?
Yes, Chair. It's just to say, as a manager and a leader who has to navigate the My Career system in its current iteration, I welcome what the plan is going ahead, because sometimes it is really unclear for the staff member what the pathways are to development. So I would really welcome the new iteration. It sounds like it'll be really helpful both for staff and manager.
I remember at the last, I think it was the last committee, we actually talked about, is there a possibility of showing that graphically as well, as opposed to the document? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Ethel?
The leadership pathway?
Yes.
Yes, I have the leadership pathway in various different graph forms. I can share one with the
Maybe you could include that in the report at the same time then.
You got it.
Thank you. In your report, you talked about this may require significant development of scope. I'm conscious that the whole area of a common operating system across the enterprise modules for people in finance, what does that actually look like in terms of development, and has the resource of that started to be considered in terms of a business case?
The primary challenge with scope from the context of this paper is that there's not integration of all of the development opportunities for individuals. So it necessitates that you exit one system to enter another in order to find your development options. I don't think that any specific development has begun on scope at this point in time for various operational reasons. But it was just to point out that that is a risk or a dependency, that with the limitations of the current system, there is only so much that we can do with that. So as you know, I guess as a contingency, there will be other systems built that are future fit, because we are building it on SharePoint. So we know that that's not going anywhere, so that we can help people navigate it, even if they do have to continue exiting one and entering another.
Yeah, it re-emphasises the need to look at that whole area of technology and support. Thank you. Nikki, you had your hand up. Do you still want to come in?
It was just to give you assurance that when we have been scoping out as part of the ecosystem work, we have incorporated work in that area into that new systems ask. So as scope comes to end of life and we do adopt another system, we've already given thought to that, just for some assurance.
Thank you, that's much appreciated. The whole area of the annual talent report that covers such significant and areas of business that need to be prioritised. I would welcome that maybe 6 monthly we get an update on this, so that they've got the annual report and then a mid-year sort of progress report. So because this is absolutely critical to advancing the transformational change with the people in the organisation. Does that sound reasonable, Nikki? Thank you. Colleagues and everyone on the call, can I suggest a 5-minute, it's 12 o'clock, a 5-minute comfort break, and we'll stop for a lunch break after that. 5 minutes just now. If you come back after that, thank you. Just want to confirm we've got our board members back, so we're quorate.
Hi Tom, how far are we into the agenda?
We're now just about to start item 3.4, so I'll formally welcome you to the meeting.
Thank you.
Chair, it looks like we're just waiting for Gary, but we are quorate, so if you're happy to start the meeting, we can reconvene.
Right, thank you. The next item is item 3.4, is a report for annual pay and reward. Nikki Page, you're leading on this, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the first annual pay and reward report that we've put to committee. We are seeking to demonstrate both the strategic alignment, but also give the kind of tactical underpinning in the journey for the last kind of 13 years. Members play an active role in the reward landscape through attendance at PMB and as the employer in making the decision on reward for staff. So they get individual reports around pay awards and this report seeks to kind of do an umbrella approach and also lay out the detail of all the kind of moving parts in this landscape. New members certainly might not be aware of the historical context, so just to give a quick overview there. On the staff side, the pay and grading structure was rationalised from the 10 legacy systems into one in 2019, and there followed appeals after that. So we do have one cohesive system for officers, and then obviously a separate system that's regulated and covered by the Police Negotiating Board, which is a tripartite agreement between the official side, which includes government, the SPA and the Chief Constable, and on the other side, the Staff Association. So it's just to give a bit of context to that. And police officer pay and benefits are discussed at that forum. We have some good positive aspects of this report that we're reporting as well. We were the first public sector organisation to achieve the minimum hourly rate of £15. We worked very closely with trade union colleagues on that. The current rate for minimum wage is £13.45, so I think that was a big juncture for us. So we've laid that out in the paper, some of those tactical aspects and junctures we've reached and why we've done it. But the paper also sets out the kind of last 2-year pay award and the inflation guarantee. And the reason that's important, obviously, is because that puts pressures into budget for this year and next. Members will also be aware that 86% of our revenue budget is on pay and benefits, pay and rations. So it's the biggest and significant part of our revenue budget, and as a consequence of that, anything we do in workforce has a significant impact on our overall budget, and therefore pay awards as a consequence put a lot of pressures into the system. So we've tried to outline our planning and our process for the last couple of years in that respect. I think in addition to that, we've moved from the kind of traditional pay and rations, and we're kind of moving into that salary sacrifice, green leasing, listening to the voice of the workforce. What's important to you? What should we protect? What shouldn't we protect? What do you expect a modern employer to provide for you? And as a consequence of those voices, we've tried to build in that area. And the other thing that we are looking to do is really push our employer brand and be able to demonstrate the worth of the package for both officers and staff in our recruitment space and through the career journey, to ensure that pay and reward is central to that kind of attraction process and life journey process in terms of us supporting workforce through pay and reward and promoting obviously the right behaviours, retention, all of those things that we've equally discussed across different papers today. So it is a first paper, so we're hoping it's going to answer a lot of questions for members and give a lot of information, and we're really excited to take your feedback and respond accordingly to it. So I'll stop there and open up for questions.
Well, thanks very much. Members can offer for any questions or reflections at this time. Angela, I'll bring you in first.
Thank you. And thanks, Nikki. It is good to see it. And again, another comprehensive report. There's a few bits and pieces, but I'll pick some of the detail up later. A couple of specifics. The gender pay gap paper that you report, rather, that you mention in your paper is going to be published on the 1st of April. And I just wondered whether, two things, will there be an opportunity for the committee to have a look at that, just to see what changes are taking place over the organisations? And the second thing is it possible that that could be generated earlier, so that the committee can again see some of the trends emerging for 25, 26 in advance of 27, if you know what I mean? And my other point is, really welcome the short life working group that's been mentioned in relation to overtime. I know that was a BDO report that was submitted to ARAC last year. I just wonder what measures, if any, have been taken to address some of those. And it's maybe not for here, but I can pick it up separately as well. But given it has been flagged and it's an important issue, I just wondered if there's any update on that. Thank you.
Yes, so I'll take the gender reporting first. So you'll be aware that obviously gender pay reporting is a statutory duty, and we have a cycle to that. And with the gender pay reporting, we also report at the same time all our other kind of statutory duties in that cycle. So in relation to analysis of wider workforce trends. So that's a comprehensive and significant piece of work that we do to produce that one offering, and we do it in that cycle, and we obviously resource it on the basis of that cycle. I can look at whether there's a way we could provide maybe some information separately if that's helpful, but certainly the amount of work that goes into that full offering, I wouldn't be able to probably provide all of that sooner, just because of the amount of analysis and the resources that we've got to put to that just now. So, but I can look at if there's modules that we could, or information that would help, if that's useful to you. The second part of that that question was around overtime. And the BDO response and measures to address this. So yes, we have had the short life working group. We've been working through a plan, obviously, to assure we address overtime, that we're using it across the business for the right reasons, that we are putting it through the system and claiming it correctly. So it's been a kind of end-to-end review of overtime that we've done, and we've looked at the component parts that contribute to it. So again, happy to look at that and bring forward some further detail if that's helpful.
Thanks, Nikki.
Thanks for that. Amina, can I come to you now?
Thanks. I don't mean to make more work for your team, Nikki, but I suppose just expanding on Angela's request there, and appreciating that obviously full details and are unlikely to be able to give an earlier. But I know that you do capture some of the other protected characteristics in terms of pay gaps. So a bit of an indication of where things are sitting just in those other demographics would be helpful. And I guess linked to that, the equality pay audit that happened, just wondering if there were any issues highlighted or risks that came out of that, and also I guess any mitigating actions that are of note.
So thank you for that. So as you've rightly pointed out, yes, we do pay reporting not just in gender, but on minority, ethnic, on LGBTI and disability as well. And the reason I think it's important to highlight that is because under the Scottish specific duties, the Scottish Government is looking to extend pay gap reporting. So we are ahead of that, and we've been involved in that conversation. So I think that's a positive in respect to the work we'd have to do in response. So I will absolutely be able to give you further information in terms of where we've got and what analysis we've got in all of those spaces, including gender, and I can get that forwarded on. It is public domain in terms of what we've published to date and that cycle, if that's helpful. In terms of the equal pay audit, so we audited our full system, our full pay and grading system at commencement of that. As you would anticipate, and that was independently assessed. As a consequence of that, obviously, there was highlights and there was advice and guidance given around any risk factors, which we control every year in regards to our pay and reward, and assessing what the pay award does to gender pay. So we do analysis of that as we're doing pay awards to ensure that we're aware of any movement or any implications when we add in a new resource or we change percentages. We do that work automatically, and we do an equality impact assessment with the assessment of our pay awards every year as well, so that we've got assurance as we go through that process that everything that we're doing is fair and equitable. So hopefully that will give you some assurance as well of that, how robust that process is.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Alistair, from yourself?
Thanks, Chair. Nikki, you asked us at the outset, about the value of this, and I don't think it can be overstated. Explaining this all in one fairly comprehensive paper. Of course, it leads to further questions, but I think it draws it all together extremely well. So thank you for doing that. Just a quick question for me. You did start off by giving a bit of historical context in terms of the SPRM and everything that was done at that time. So I just wondered what the thinking was at the moment in terms of the current effectiveness of this and any evaluation work that is going on, thinking about how it may need to evolve into the future.
So thank you. So our pay and grading job evaluation system is founded in the COSLA system, and as a consequence of the work we did, we tailored some of the factors of that to be more robust from an equality sense. What COSLA and other organisations are doing just now is revisiting that evaluation system to make it more robust, and actually the elements that we had already looked at are the elements they're looking to change, which is helpful for us, and it gives us the assurance that the work we did not only was robust, but it future-proofed. So it actually means that the rest of public sector using that service are kind of coming more in line with ourselves. So that's helpful for us. We are obviously linked into all of that work, keeping an eye to make sure that we're always, if not ahead of the game, we are always absolutely industry compliant and consistent in that space. In regards to ongoing work, we have also recently, over the last 18 months, looked to introduce a kind of more robust QA process to our ongoing evaluation. So as we restructure, we evaluate again and make sure that it's fit for purpose. The other thing that we do and that we've got built into that process for assurance is that we understand that as areas of business restructure, what they anticipate will happen is not always what happens in the ground after a change. So we also have a process of going in every 12 months to look at and say, did what you thought would happen, did it happen, and what's the impact on people's roles as a consequence, so as we can assess that to ensure that we are robust and that management expectations plays out in practice and that we are fair to staff as a consequence of that. So hopefully that gives you some assurance that we are constantly iteratively looking to improve the system to make sure that it works for the service, it works for staff, and that we are considering. Separately, in the police officer front, you'll be aware that we're doing work with Fraser of Allen to look at the wider pay and rations. So there's ongoing and equally important work around about police officer pay and rations that will be significant, and we will bring forward that in due course as well. So just so that you're conscious of both the officer side and the staff side.
That's very helpful. Thank you for that, Nikki. I knew you wouldn't be standing still with these things. I don't underestimate in any way, shape or form the work that was done in 2019 and how difficult that was to do in a compressed time frame. But as you've highlighted, the organisation is changing at an ever increasing pace, and this staff pay and reward needs to keep up with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. If colleagues from Staff Association and Union, any points at this stage? Dave, I'll bring you in now.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just want to reiterate a lot of what Nikki said there. We really welcome the negotiations we had. I think the CPI protection really demonstrated the value of that collective bargaining and the impact it's now having on our staff there as well. I think one thing about the equal pay is we need to make sure that governance remains robust when we're going through that process. And we're fully aware of budget constraints and the affordability pressures that are being put on Police Scotland and the SPA. But what we can't allow to happen is for them to erode to any terms and conditions indirectly.
Thanks, Dave. That's noted. Okay, Emma, let's see you put your hand up.
Yeah, sorry, it was just to say, certainly we've got a good working relationship with the PMBS and sitting on it, we're always, continuing to bargain across the table, and we will always try and endeavour to get the best deal across. But certainly the communications in the room and in the side rooms and things are very cooperative. So I think that's definitely a positive, and we're obviously seeing the increase in May, which again, people are seeing the benefit of those conversations and forums.
Thanks, Emma, that's noted. Moving on then, item 3.5 is a verbal update on the strategic workforce plan. This is of particular significance to the committee given the most recent best value audit and the comments made regarding that. And while we recognise that work's ongoing, and it's ongoing under the pressures of the current budget challenges and constraints, we must keep a strategic view of where the workforce is in that alignment. So I would particularly welcome this update at the moment, and I believe it's Ethna, yourself, that's going to lead on it.
Yes, it is. Thanks, Chair. As mentioned, the original plan was that there was an organisational design and capacity creation paper due for discussion at this committee, recommended for withdrawal from the work plan due to a significant amount of internal work that's required in advancing the commencement of the next iteration of the strategic workforce plan. But to that end, there are ongoing discussions and meetings for the formation of, and I know Nikki referenced this earlier, so working title at the moment, but a strategic workforce and oversight authority. The terms of reference are in circulation for that forum with approval from the Chief Officers team. In terms of ongoing activity in this that I'm happy to share sort of very brief verbal updates around, strong links exist between the members of that group and OD, with the outcomes from it establishing a really solid and necessary baseline foundation position to consider what the next beneficial steps in commencing with the strategic workforce plan, the next iteration, will be, particularly following the publication of our next 3-year business plan. Pardon me. The strategic workforce planning team within my area in OD have commenced trend analysis and engaging with divisions and directorates to gather information and insight on the future workforce. That is the first commencement of tangible efforts into how we create a coherent and connected picture of the growing and reducing threat risks and harms facing policing and also the workforce over the coming years. Central to that, and the primary focus for OD in that space, will be the building of the overall capability and skills from today's workforce position into the future skills needed to make sure that Police Scotland are resilient and agile for the future, and the delivery of a long-term roadmap to deliver those. Colleagues within learning, training and development are leading on a training needs analysis at present, and there is close collaboration between our two areas to combine and fully integrate that work into the strategic workforce plan. But a more comprehensive paper will be brought to a future committee. I am happy to field alongside Nikki and Heather any questions that you might have regarding the strategic workforce plan. I understand the sort of the sensitivity and the urgency around this area.
Thanks very much, and really, I suppose the fact that we kept it on the agenda as a verbal update was the recognition of the importance of this work to the governance arrangements for SPA as well, in terms of that best value audit. Members, is there any questions you want to raise at the moment? Can I go to Gary Forsyth first, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ethne. It's great to hear the importance that's being afforded to such a critical area of business. And my question doesn't relate to driver training, because I know we're covering that next on the agenda, but given that you've done a lot of the groundwork and preparation into what will become the strategic workforce plan, you might argue that the driver training issue arose, as a symptom of an absence of a workforce plan. And so my question would be, have you identified any areas where the next driver training type issue might arise? So do we understand what the changes in legislation might be in areas of business which might lead to a change in volume, which then lead to a lag in training, which then lead to an impact on operational delivery? Are any of those areas identified, and what's the next driver training really? Have we got that at this stage?
Sorry, Nikki, you come on in.
Yeah, it was just to give assurance that in terms of legislative changes, we've now got a really good and robust programme that is government or consulting and different legislation that will affect policing. We are now building in the requirements for resources to that, and we're making government colleagues aware of the implications for the service on it. So that process is now far more robust than it was previously. In regards to your observation in respect to driver training, it's an absolute acute one. One of the areas that we have suffered from is in our early days of coming together as a service, we as in response to budget made a lot of cuts that we are now suffering from just now. So some of this is failure because of the decision making at that time, which was absolutely done when there was no strategic workforce plan. So your observation is acute and accurate, that we did suffer and continue to suffer from that, and the strategic workforce plan will seek to ensure that we don't get into that space again, but the legislative process connected to that's in place already, so hopefully that gives you some assurance. Ethne, I'll let you continue.
Thanks,
can I
Gary.
just clarify, does that relate to Scottish Government or UK Government as well? Because some of the legislation changes are across the UK, aren't they?
Yeah, and obviously, as those legislation changes come, government are involved in the discussions with them regardless, so that process is consistent.
Yeah, and Gary, sorry, just to give a short answer to the other element of your question, no, the trend analysis has commenced, but it's not yet mature enough to identify where the next areas are. We are seeking to identify, like, under the threat, risk and harm, yes, to the policing landscape, but also crucially to what our workforce will look like, or the diversity of our workforce, the expectations of our workforce, both in terms of who we attract in and how we retain that as well. So we are looking at threat, risk and harm from both perspectives. But at this early stage, no, I can't say that we have identified where the next issue is.
I would suggest that, that this work is intended to make sure that that gap is covered. Yes. But to support you as a sense of reassurance. If you think of the consequences of Brexit and leaving the European Union and having to reassess the workforce in terms of international work, etc., and the loss of access to some of the systems, Police Scotland was leading the way in some areas, etc. So it is very responsive to that type of strategic shift. But no doubt, if you go into the specialisms and skills, etc., that work is going to be absolutely critical for ongoing day-to-day management of the organisation. Can I come to Angela Leach?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Efna and the team. I know that there's a lot of thinking going on about around this. So a couple of observations more than anything. I think even from this agenda, there's a lot of building blocks in place for a strategic workforce plan. So I think that we should take reassurance that we're not starting from scratch. You know, we've seen the talent work that you're doing. We've seen the pay and reward work that's ongoing, and we're about to look at other succession issues. So I think that fundamentally there is already work ongoing that is looking at key elements of strategic workforce planning. And I think, just given my own experience of this, I would urge us not to get caught in the detail of it, because we could spend a long time really pursuing things like training needs analysis in a lot of detail, and we would potentially lose sight of the strategic nature of the plan that we need. And the plan really needs to be built on very much the business analysis of where we're going in the future. But we also need the medium-term financial plan. So there's other dependencies that I know you'll be aware of, but we need to see within that plan. But it has to be a living document that will then be updated periodically as circumstances change. So it needs to be something that is really live. So I know that you'll probably be aware of it, but I just think that it's worth reflecting on the fact that, you know, it's not a blank sheet of paper at this point.
Thanks for that, Angela. Amina, can I bring you in now?
Yeah, thank you. I suppose just building on that point about being a live document, and the conversation before about kind of horizon scanning. Obviously, we are in an election year, so I guess it's just sort of ensuring that there's enough flexibility as well to adapt and change, you know, during the planning process, depending on whatever emerges. So, yeah, just to ensure that there is that capacity there to be flexible.
Thanks for that. And I think that's key. It's already been alluded to in the input so far about the need to be responsive in how we design this plan, and it being a living document. One of the areas we've already talked about is yourself, it needs to be coherent and connected in terms of the picture it presents. And that we have got a clear interest in terms of the accountability for it, and you know that responsibility is placed on us by best value as well. So the strategic nature of this plan, not getting caught into the short-term financial planning that Angela talked about, is really important. So it's just an assurance as well that the ongoing work here design involves the authority officials as well, so that we understand as a committee what's coming down the road to us. Is there any update you could give us on that?
Nikki, I don't know if you were going to speak there. Yeah.
Yeah, I referred earlier, Chair, just to that overall board that is getting convened, so as that we have got that wider oversight, both acknowledging Angela's really spot on points in regards to building blocks via that umbrella. So that board will take that kind of emphasis on in regards to that. So hopefully that's helpful. But that is the purpose, and that is the reason we're pulling that board together, to ensure that ownership and governance is there. So really grateful for members' inputs to that. I think we're all in the same headspace of what needs done and the challenges in that space as well. So thank you.
Yeah, and we're also building on the experience of the first plan that we brought together, and there's challenges in that too. So I appreciate that. Eunice and the Federation, have you any reflections at the moment?
Nothing from me.
Not from me, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks to both of you. Can we move on then to paper 3.6, was reference the earlier discussion around the police driver training progress report from Chief Superintendent Louise Harvey.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to update the board on the progress of our review that we carried out on driver training. So I'll work my way through a few parts of the report. Primarily the introduction, just to say that the challenges we face were in two parts. So a comprehensive review, the police driver training programme that was undertaken, looked at the curriculum content, course duration and student to instructor ratios. And that review identified areas where our courses delivered by Police Scotland required enhancement. And the second part to that was that holistic review that we carried out provided a greater visibility of the demand for specialist courses within advanced driving and the tactical phase of the pursuit. And as the paper outlines, those are courses delivered to very specialist areas within policing to drive high performance vehicles with emergency response privileges. The background to the regulations, I'll give you a bit of background to the regulations and how Police Scotland came to be requiring to enhance them in 2026. The purpose of the regulations, which came into force on the 30th of November 2022, was primarily, I won't list them because they're in the paper for everyone to see, but the main one particularly for our people, was to ensure a fairer legal comparator for police drivers. So the law now judges a police officer driving against a careful and competent constable who's undertaken the same prescribed training as opposed to a member of the public. It creates a fairer benchmark in post-incident or court proceedings. So that's in relation to careless and dangerous driving. The legislation focused on prescribing the length of each course and the teacher-student ratio. What's important to note is the regulations didn't at any point dictate what the content was, and it's always been recognised, and that was across the board, England and Wales and Scotland, and it's always been recognised that the content of the material that Police Scotland deliver is of a really high quality, and that was never in doubt during the review. Even when I was in liaison with legal services, that consistent quality of what we delivered was never in question. It was the ratios of instructors and students and also the length of our courses, which fell short on a few occasions. The information that I understand from conversations that occurred pre-November 2022 was that Police Scotland were involved in discussions at the time, and that what I've probably admitted I have admitted from the paper that could have provided a bit more, I guess, of a positive picture was a number of courses that Police Scotland delivered in November 2022 actually were compliant already and delivered above and beyond what the requirements of the regulations were. So aside from our driver training programme being in a good place with them, we have recognised that there was areas which are listed in the paper, the initial phase of the pursuit, the category B and D vans, and escorting of abnormal loads that we required to enhance that programme to make sure we complied with the time and instructor-to-student ratios. The following action was taken to ensure compliance and to make sure that we were keeping our people right. That was when we carried out the review, at the heart of what we were doing regarding compliance with regulations was to make sure that we were ensuring, in conjunction with the Federation, was to make sure that we were keeping our people right as to what they were driving, their rights to drive and their abilities. We issued a series in January this year, that moved into the delivery phase of the review, a series of force memos which rescinded affected officers' authorities to undertake the outlined driving disciplines that are outlined in the paper, and a targeted delivery plan was developed to deliver the required training for both category B and D1 vehicles. That delivery plan for those vehicles is going really well, and as of yesterday, we had over 1,600 officers, that's 50 officers trained and upskilled per day since the 5th of January in category B driving under a response condition. That's going really well. The other thing we got is a commitment from our executive for an investment of permanent qualified resources and additional resource to help design, deliver and review the courses we've got. So we've got a continual review process going on to make sure we're delivering consistently with all regulations and standards throughout the UK, so we're comparable with UK. The remaining driver training courses, the ones that didn't need anything done to them as part of the review, the main one that's in there, which is really positive, is the standard response driving course. There was nothing required for that. There was no upskilling required, and no extra delivery required. It's our most frequently delivered component of the programme, and I think it's important to talk about that during this update, because the course is fundamental to the element of policing, but not all officers receive or need that skill immediately upon joining the service. And if you think on a role basis, when our officers join and they're going through their 2-year probation, everything else that they're committed to when they're in their probation, if we were to overload them with, then they were then responsible for taking colleagues to a blue light call. That is an additional responsibility on them while they're trying to learn the role, the laws, the legislation. So we actually think the way we deliver the courses and the time frame we deliver them on is actually really is good. We do base the allocation of the standard response driving courses on several factors, including geographical location. Officers who work in rural areas are prioritised over officers that work in a rural area when required, and that prioritisation is done in with close liaison with all divisional commanders. We run a regular group. We've got a spot for each division to make sure that we are allocating spaces according to need and demand within local policing divisions, and that's to ensure there's no disruption in service to our communities. The summary at number 4, at point 4 on the paper, we've got the summary of our training requirements and our average annual capability. The targeted delivery plan that I spoke about is outlined at point 5, and as you'll see, because of the additional resources that have been allocated to driver training, we've been able to double the spaces in both tactical phase of the pursuit and advanced driving, which I do recognise and acknowledge we do have that demand there in the pipeline waiting to be trained. So the executive have recognised that and committed additional resources to double the spaces on those courses to allow us to work through that demand on a quicker. Finally, before I take questions, the driver training strategic oversight group, something that wasn't in place before and is now sitting, created to provide governance and strategic direction to ensure training courses align with operational requirements and are legislatively compliant. One of the good things about the oversight group, and it ties into the question that Gary spoke about, and are we horizon scanning? Do we know what's coming over the hill? What other legislation will affect demand? And I'm talking obviously just about in my own area with driver training at that time. And what is good about that group is because of the members that are in that group and also our commitment to the National Police Chiefs Council group, we know that there is other legislation in the pipeline. So we are now already making plans for that. That is specifically to do with nighttime driving, something that we're not legally obliged to train on at the moment, but what our standard response officers, when they do their standard response course, as of a date when it's enacted, and it's not yet, they will require to carry out 2 meaningful drives under the hours of darkness, which makes total sense if you think of the amount of time, particularly in Scotland, we work in darkness during the months. So as a result of that group, we're already preparing for that next lot of legislation coming in. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that very helpful update, and also for how responsive you've been to the request of this committee on this topic. Colleagues, any questions on this at the moment? Alistair, hey, can I bring you in?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the update, Louise. That was really helpful, and you know, we Scotland were where they were, but I think the way you've responded to it and where we are now is really encouraging. Just at the end there, you emphasised that driver training strategic oversight group and the role that they're taking. Is this, you know, under the current governance structures, is this a permanent group that's going to be in place for the foreseeable future? You know, as part of the checks and balances to stop us, you know, getting back to a place that we were in relation to driver training.
Alistair, thanks for that question. And yeah, absolutely. It has the regularity of the meetings has stalled at the moment only because of the review that was ongoing, but it is set to be a regular meeting for all the reasons that I've understood, that we've got that regular liaison between everyone. Important members and stakeholders in that group include our legal services, but also Darren Patterson from your own, from SPA. He's invited and sits on that group as well, so that he's aware of what's going on and what the conversations are. Health and safety are on it, and any actions that come out of it, we then liaise with colleagues in the Tri-Service to see then we can be doing to help each other, and are we on par. But no, it's a regular event now, Alistair, and it will also be accompanied by strong governance of what actions come out of the meeting, to make sure that if anybody was to ask me a question in 3 years' time, I could tell them exactly what happened at each meeting, so that we've got that accountability.
Yeah, thanks for that, Louise. I appreciate the explanation.
That's really, really helpful. Amina, I see you've put your hand up. Can I bring you in?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for that, Louise. Lots of assurance there on work that's underway to address some of the issues. I suppose just further to the kind of oversight and governance, I'm just wondering if updates could be mainstream going forward to committee as well. Probably best through the biannual learning and development report. That might be helpful.
Thanks, Amina. And yeah, that was something that I was seeking clarity at the end of my update, would be that my intention is that driver training would be subsumed into the main paper, the main learning and development paper, now that we've carried out the review, explained our position where we're at, and ensured that that governance and scrutiny is there to deliver a plan to move it forward. That would be my intention, if it's agreeable, that is subsumed within the main paper.
Unless colleagues think otherwise, I would think that's sensible and agree to it. Is everybody content with that? Right, we'll take that decision. Louise, thanks for that. Is there any other questions that you wish to put to Louise just now? Okay. Well, listen, thanks very much for that comprehensive update, and the fact this has been a discussion going on for some months. So your own leadership in that area is recognised by the committee, Louise. So thanks very much indeed for that. Draw that item to close. The next item on is the item 4, committee effectiveness report, that comes from the governance support at the Scottish Police Authority. I've got Cam Valence down to speak to us.
Hi, Chair. Afternoon.
Hi, Cam.
Hi, thank you. So the committee effectiveness process is an important part of our commitment to strengthen and improve our governance. The annual self-assessment process allows us to consider how the committee is performing against its terms of reference. This informs members' development and both committee development and committee work plans. It also informs the overall certificate of assurance process, which is required to be submitted to the Audit, Risk and Assurance Committee in May as part of the annual audit and reporting process. So this year we again asked stakeholders for their views, and the number of overall responses to the survey has doubled compared to last year, which is really positive. Of those responses, one of them was specific to the People Committee. So overall, the results from the members' survey are positive across all areas, although results have varied compared to the 24-25 results. The one stakeholder response we received was positive as well. So the ask of the committee today is to discuss the results and confirm whether you're satisfied that the committee has discharged its terms of reference for the 25-26 period to date. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Karen. Can I offer any questions to members first? Okay, there's no questions. Can I ask members, are we satisfied that the report on committee effectiveness meets our requirements as a committee and that we have fulfilled the terms of reference? Thank you for that. Can I just, before I move on, my sincere apologies in the item 3.6, which is of significant interest to the Police Federation around police driver training progress. I didn't offer the opportunity for any reflection from either the Federation or Unison. Can I just go back to that and ensure that I haven't closed down any conversation around that very important area of business? Dave Ferguson from Unison.
Thanks, Chair. And I'm not criticising your chair, your chairship at all, and your chairing of the meeting. But you also didn't ask us for any feedback on the My Career paper either, which I think was item 3.3. Although, if you're happy to do that, that would be great as well. Thank you. Just on the driver training programme, obviously it doesn't really affect police staff, although there would be some elements of driver training for police staff, specifically I think on the D1 side if they had to drive any of the larger vehicles. I know some of our safety camera operators have to have the D1 licence to drive those vehicles, so there isn't a major impact on police staff. But where the impact on police staff does happen is when there is those abstractions, the necessary abstractions for staff to then attend for that driver training. So I think it's just important that gets captured as well within the assessments of these things. You know, that there is an implication for the training and support functions, and you know, the impact for support staff and police staff who are maybe left behind while those abstractions take place. That was my feedback on the driver training, and I'll pause it.
Can I go straight to Louise then before I come to Mike here? Just that assurance that that training need is actually incorporated in the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Dave and Chair. Yeah, absolutely, Dave. And although, as you reflect on that, it doesn't overly affect our civilian staff colleagues, what it does, our civilian staff colleagues provide a lot of our driver training, particularly with their standard response driving, and we absolutely couldn't do what we've done in the last month without them. So I'm very grateful for our civilian members for that, our staff members. But no, absolutely captured, Dave, and I'll take that point forward.
Thanks for that. And going back again in terms of My Career now.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Chair. I had to smile when Gary was talking about his 31-year service in policing and the NHS, because I'm 31 years service in policing as well, and the amount of different sort of alliterations of personal development plans and PCRs and PDRs and PDPs and My Career that I've been through. The My Career pilot actually started in forensic services, where my background is in as well. We were one of the pilot areas, along I think it was with the C Division and the Central Scotland Police area at the time as well. And as a former manager as well, I'm always excited when I see a process coming in that's going to help develop staff, develop me as a member of police staff at the time as well. But what was very apparent in that paper was that decline in engagement, you know, with the process, which was really indicating a lack of workforce confidence. And I know Ethne, I've had these conversations with Ethne in various boards as well about the fact that it became almost like a tick box exercise. What the paper didn't show was when the completions were actually taking place, because it ran from sort of the 1st of April to the end of March the following year, and most of those completions took place before the closing date at the end of March, because that's when it had to be done by. There wasn't those conversations that took place throughout the year. I know in forensic services, I think we were encouraging at least 4 conversations with the staff on a regular basis. So I welcome the fact that they're talking about having at least biannual conversations with staff, because it can't just be a one-off conversation. What I'm really pleased to see, though, is that pathway that's going to be developed for staff. I think one of the biggest issues with my career was that you had line managers who were very keen to encourage staff and to develop staff, but there was no process for them to then take it forward. There was no resources there for them to take it forward. So those pathways that are going to be given for staff and for officers to develop, whether it's just developing in their existing role or to develop to lead, and they're going to be very transparent, hopefully, and be available for all grades of staff, visible and equitable for all grades of staff. I think that's a really important part of the process as well. So we'll welcome the next alliteration of my career when it appears. Thank you.
Thankfully, and I don't take it as a criticism, but it is accurate reflection that I didn't come back to you at that point, so I do apologise. But I'm grateful that we still have Ethne on the call. Ethne, is there any response that you would give to Dave just now, other than the acknowledgement of that?
Yes, the acknowledgement, definitely, and also the empathy. I also come from a public sector background and remain in it. I understand how the trickiness of engaging with performance management or performance conversations and development ones. But to reiterate what I said earlier, I think the important thing to focus on is building an infrastructure that's really tangible for people and that's easy for them to navigate, so that it doesn't become a tick box exercise, and over time we can shift the mindset into something that this can be engaged with and there are benefits to engaging with it. It's not going to happen just because a pilot happened, but it'll start to shift the needle somewhat. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair, for revisiting that subject. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Dave. And I suppose in terms of this committee, I take comfort from the conversation we've just had that there is ongoing engagement between you and our colleagues regarding what's coming down the line. So that from our perspective as a committee is ensuring that there is that engagement. So thanks to both of you for that update. Colleagues, the final item on the public session is the committee work plan. Paper was presented to you with the standard reports. Are you content that that is still relevant for the meeting, which will be in June? Okay. Angela?
Thanks, Tom. I just wanted to say that most of us know that this is your last meeting of the People Committee, Tom, before you step down from the board at the end of next month. And I know that the board are organising or have organised something to say farewell to you and Mary. But I just wanted to say on behalf of the committee that we're really grateful for your chairmanship. You took it up from Fiona early in 2025, but you've been on the People Committee for a long time, and I think that certainly in my time on the board and on people, the People Committee, your oversight has strengthened or your leadership has strengthened the oversight that we've brought to this particular committee. I'm sure that there will be other opportunities that we can say thank you to you, but a big thanks from me. And I'm also personally grateful for the time that you've given me as I take up the reins from you. So maybe we could all just say thank you to Tom.
Thanks very much for those words, and to all of you, I wish you well, and particularly yourself as you take over the chair. Also note that from this meeting going forward, the important work of the Policing Together oversight group mainstreams into the committee here. And I think that will be absolutely critical to ensure that the principles of that are embedded in the work of Police Scotland. I'm confident that they are going forward. I personally wish everyone great success going forward. This is an amazing institution, the organisation, and all the aspects of it, forensic service and the corporate, as well as all the areas of Police Scotland. It's been a huge part of my life, and as a citizen and living here in Scotland, I feel very grateful to have what is a world-class service. I was once asked to reflect on this to a civic group in Scotland, a very significant civic group, and it just lifted their awareness of policing in Scotland above the immediate headlines. And if you look at where their role as a global citizen, their global reach as an organisation, our influence in terms of the UK, as well as other services and communities in Scotland, this is a world-class service with world-class people. And I wish you all the best going forward. And I'll draw this session to a close with those words and suggest that we take a 30-minute break for lunch, and then we'll reconvene only with those who are required in the private session.